The night Lydia Mercer was sold like cattle to a man 3 times her age, her older sister Elena made a choice that would set the frontier on fire. 26 years of silence, 26 years of scrubbing floors while her stepfamily fed on her mother's memory like vultures. But watching that transaction, seeing her father pocket Victor Hale's money while Lydia's hands trembled in a borrowed wedding dress, something inside Elena finally cracked open. By dawn, she'd be gone. By spring, she'd be married to a scarred rancher with blood on his conscience. By summer, she'd be holding a rifle in the rain, staring down the barrel at the richest man in 3 territories. This is that story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Elena's fight travels. The stew burned because Elena wasn't watching it. She stood at the kitchen window instead, fingers wrapped around the edge of the wash basin, knuckles gone white. Outside in the yard, her father Henry Mercer was shaking hands with Victor Hale like they'd just closed a deal on livestock. Which, Elena supposed, they had. Lydia stood between them in a dress that didn't fit right. Too tight in the shoulders, too loose everywhere else. Someone else's wedding gown, probably. Charity from the church ladies who liked to hand down things they didn't want anymore to families they pitied in public and mocked in private. Lydia's face had that frozen look Elena recognized. The one that meant she was somewhere else entirely, somewhere far away where men didn't barter over her like she was a mare with good breeding prospects. Victor Hale was 53 years old. Lydia had turned 17 last month. "Elena, the stew!" Margaret Mercer's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. Elena's stepmother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face pinched into that expression of permanent disappointment she'd perfected over the years. Behind her, Elena's stepbrother Raymond smirked from the parlor, boots up on the good chair, tracking coal dust everywhere. "It's burning," Margaret said. Not worried, accusing. Elena turned back to the stove and grabbed the pot handle without thinking. The metal seared into her palm and she jerked back, biting down on the curse that wanted to escape. She wrapped her hand in her apron and moved the pot off the heat. The smell of scorched meat filled the room. "Useless," Margaret muttered. 26 years old and still can't manage a simple meal. 26 years old. As if Elena didn't know. As if the number didn't sit in her chest like a stone, getting heavier every year she stayed in this house that used to be her mother's. Back when the walls were painted yellow instead of this depressing gray. Back when there were flowers in the window boxes and bread cooling on the counter that didn't taste like resentment. Her mother had died when Elena was 8. Pneumonia that winter, the harsh kind that settled into lungs and didn't let go. Her father had remarried within the year, practical, everyone said. A man with a daughter needed a woman to run the household. That Margaret came with a son only 2 years older than Elena seemed like good fortune. A ready-made family. Except families were supposed to care about each other. "Set the table," Margaret said. "Your father will be in soon with Mr. Hale. Use the good china." "For him?" The words slipped out before Elena could stop them. Margaret's expression went cold. "For our guest. Unless you'd like to explain to your father why you're being disrespectful to the man who's about to become family." Family. The word tasted like copper. Elena pulled the good plates from the cabinet, her mother's plates, the ones with the blue flowers around the rim that had somehow survived 18 years of Margaret's reign. Her burned palm throbbed with each movement. She set 6 places at the table, 1 for Henry, 1 for Margaret, 1 for Raymond, 1 for Victor Hale, 1 for Lydia, 1 for herself, though she doubted she'd be eating with them. More likely, she'd be serving while they ate, refilling glasses and clearing plates like the hired help she'd become in her own mother's house. Through the window, she could see them still talking in the yard. Her father was nodding, that eager way he had when he thought money was about to change hands. Victor Hale stood like a man who knew his own worth, shoulders back, hat tipped just so, boots polished despite the dust that covered everything in this coal town. He owned a cattle ranch 2 territories west, land that stretched farther than most men could ride in a day. That's what Raymond had said, anyway, when he'd come home 3 weeks ago with news that Victor was looking for a wife. "Young," Raymond had added, grinning. "Wants a woman who can still give him sons." Lydia had gone pale. Elena had felt something twist in her stomach. Now here they were. The deal done. Victor's hand on Lydia's shoulder, proprietary. Lydia's eyes on the ground. The door banged open and Raymond sauntered in, tracking more dirt. "They're coming in. Pa says to pour the whiskey." Short the beam. Elena moved to the sideboard where her father kept the good bottle, the one he only brought out for occasions. She poured 3 glasses. Her father never let the women drink at his table. Heard Hale's paying $300, Raymond said, leaning against the doorframe. $300 for Lydia. He whistled low. Didn't think the old man had it in him. Sharp negotiating. She's your sister, Elena said quietly. Half-sister. Raymond picked at his teeth. And she's getting a better life than she'd have here. Big ranch, money, security. Pa's doing her a favor. Elena wanted to throw the whiskey bottle at his head. She set it down carefully instead. The door opened again and they came in, her father first, face flushed with satisfaction. Victor Hale behind him, filling the doorway with his broad shoulders and expensive coat. And Lydia last, small and silent, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold despite the summer heat. Elena, her father said, this is Mr. Victor Hale. Mr. Hale, my eldest daughter. Ma'am. Victor's eyes barely touched her before sliding away. Why would they linger? She was 26, plain, wearing a dress she'd mended so many times the original fabric was barely visible beneath the patches. Not worth noticing, not worth anything to a man like him. Dinner's ready, Elena said. They settled around the table, her father at the head, Victor to his right, Lydia beside Victor like she was already his property. Margaret took the seat to Henry's left, Raymond beside her. Elena stood by the kitchen, waiting. Sit down, girl, her father said, waving at the empty chair. Your family tonight. Tonight, because tomorrow she'd go back to being the help. Elena sat. She kept her burned hand in her lap. Her father poured the whiskey and raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said, and profitable alliances. To family, Victor added, his hand finding Lydia's on the table, covering it completely, trapping it. Lydia didn't look up. They drank. Elena pushed food around her plate. The conversation flowed around her, talk of cattle prices and land disputes, of water rights and railway expansion. Victor spoke like a man used to being listened to. Her father hung on every word. Margaret smiled her tight smile. Raymond asked questions clearly designed to make himself sound clever. Nobody looked at Lydia. Nobody looked at Elena either, but Elena was used to that. She'd learned years ago how to be invisible, how to move through rooms without making sound, how to exist without taking up space that might be wanted by someone who mattered more. The wedding's set for Saturday, Victor said, cutting into his meat. I've arranged for the pastor, simple ceremony. We'll head out Sunday morning. I want to be back to the ranch before the heat gets worse. Saturday? Lydia spoke for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper. That's 3 days. That's right. Victor smiled at her, the kind of smile that was probably meant to be reassuring but landed somewhere closer to patronizing. No point in waiting. You'll need time to pack. Though don't bring too much. I'll buy you proper clothes once we're home, ranch wife clothes. I thought... Lydia stopped, swallowed. I thought I'd have more time to say goodbye. Goodbye to what? Victor's smile didn't change, but something in his eyes did. This coal town? This house? You should be grateful you're getting out. She is, Henry said quickly. Too quickly. Aren't you, Lydia? Lydia's fingers were white where they gripped her fork. Yes, Pa. Good girl. Victor patted her hand, like she was a dog. Elena's vision tunneled. The room felt too hot, too small. The walls pressed in, and the smell of burned stew mixed with whiskey made her stomach turn. She watched her sister, her quiet, gentle sister who'd never hurt anyone, sitting there frozen, while men decided her entire life, and something inside Elena finally cracked. Not broke? Cracked. Like an egg. Like something ready to hatch. She stood abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor. Elena? Father frowned. Where are you going? Kitchen. Need to... She couldn't finish. She walked out before anyone could stop her. In the kitchen, she gripped the edge of the counter and breathed. Just breathed. The burned palm throbbed. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Behind her, she could hear them still talking, still laughing, still sealing the deal that would ship Lydia off to a man old enough to be her father. 3 days. Elena looked around the kitchen that had once been her mother's domain, at the walls that trapped her, at the window that showed nothing but gray sky and coal dust settling over everything like a shroud. 26 years she'd lived in this house. 26 years of making herself small and quiet and useful. 26 years of hoping that if she just tried hard enough, her father would look at her the way he'd looked at her mother. That Margaret would soften. That Raymond would stop sneering. That someone, anyone, would see her as something more than the ghost of a dead woman who'd had the audacity to leave behind a daughter instead of a son. 26 years of waiting for her life to begin. She thought about Lydia in that ill-fitting dress, hands shaking. She thought about Victor Hale's smile. She thought about her father counting money while his daughter turned to stone at the table. She thought about leaving. The idea hit her so hard she had to sit down. Just leave. Walk out. Head west like people did in the stories, chasing gold or land or whatever it was that made people brave enough to abandon everything they knew. But she couldn't. Could she? Where would she go? What would she do? She had no money, no skills beyond cooking and cleaning, no family except the one that barely tolerated her existence, no prospects, no future beyond more years in this house, watching more deals get made, maybe finding herself on the bargaining end of the table one day when her father decided she was costing him more than she was worth, unless she did something about it. The thought settled into her bones like truth. She stood up, moved quietly to the pantry where she kept her things, a small bag with her mother's old shawl and a few pieces of clothing. Not much. She'd never had much. She added bread from the counter, dried meat from the shelf. A knife? The good one with the sharp blade that Margaret didn't know she'd claimed. She took the emergency money from the jar on the highest shelf. $43 her father kept for emergencies. She figured this qualified. Then she walked upstairs, still moving quietly out of habit, into the room she'd shared with Lydia since they were children. Lydia's things were already half packed in a trunk at the foot of the bed, the trousseau Margaret had been assembling. Elena knelt beside it and pulled out the bottom drawer where Lydia kept her private things. The letters from that boy in town who'd courted her last summer before Henry had run him off for being poor. The pressed flowers. The journal with the ribbon marker. Elena took the journal and opened it to a blank page. She pulled the pencil from the binding and wrote, "I tried to stop this. I couldn't. I'm sorry. I'll find a way. I promise. E." She tucked the journal back into the drawer and stood, looked around the room one more time, at the faded wallpaper, the crooked window frame, the water stain on the ceiling shaped like a cloud. Then she went back downstairs. They were still at the table, still talking, still drinking. Nobody noticed when she slipped out the back door. The night air hit her face, cool after the stuffy house. The sky was deep black, stars scattered across it like salt spilled on dark cloth. Elena stood for a moment, letting her eyes adjust. Behind her, through the window, she could see them all silhouetted against the lamplight, her father gesturing with his glass, Victor nodding. Lydia still frozen in her chair. Elena turned away. She walked past the chicken coop and the tool shed, past the garden her mother had planted 20 years ago that Margaret had let go to weeds, past the property line marked by a broken fence her father kept meaning to fix. She walked until the house was a dim light behind her, until the road stretched out ahead, leading west toward the railway station 2 miles down the valley. She didn't look back, not when her feet started to ache in her worn boots, not when the bag grew heavy on her shoulder, not when doubt crept in like fog, whispering that she was making a mistake, that she'd regret this, that girls like her didn't just leave home and survive. She kept walking. By the time she reached the station, the sky was beginning to lighten at the edges, gray dawn creeping in. The station was empty except for a clerk dozing behind the counter and a couple of rail workers loading freight. Elena walked up to the counter and rang the bell. The clerk jerked awake, blinking. "Help you?" "How far west does the morning train go?" He squinted at her. "West?" "All the way to the frontier settlements. Blackwater, Dry Creek, Red Valley. Depends on how far you got money for." Elena pulled out the $43. "How far will this get me?" The clerk counted it. "Red Valley. That'll get you to Red Valley with maybe $2 left over." "When does the train leave?" "Hour. I'll take it." He wrote out the ticket and slid it across the counter, looked at her properly for the first time. "You running from something, miss?" "No," Elena said. She picked up the ticket. "Running toward—" She sat on a bench outside and waited for the train. The sun started to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Pretty colors for an ugly town. She thought about Lydia waking up in that bedroom, finding the note. She thought about her father discovering the empty money jar. She thought about Margaret's face when she realized there'd be nobody to cook breakfast. She didn't feel guilty. She felt awake. The train arrived in a screech of metal and steam. Elena climbed aboard and found a seat by the window. The car was mostly empty. A few rough-looking men who might have been miners or drifters. An older woman with a basket of eggs. A young couple holding hands and whispering to each other with that look people got when they thought nobody else existed. Elena watched the town slide past as the train pulled out. The coal yards and company houses, the church with its crooked steeple, the saloon where men drank away their wages while their families went hungry. She watched it all disappear into the distance and felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been wound tight for 26 years. The train rolled west, toward frontier towns and cattle ranches, toward dust and drought, and the kind of harsh freedom she'd only read about in newspapers. Toward a life she'd have to build from nothing because she had nothing. Toward whatever was waiting. Elena leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes. The burned palm throbbed in rhythm with the wheels on the tracks. When she opened her eyes again, the landscape had changed. No more coal-black hills. Now it was all open sky and rolling prairie, golden grass stretching to the horizon like an ocean frozen mid-wave. She'd never seen anything so big. The woman with the egg basket leaned across the aisle. First time out of coal country? Elena nodded. Thought so. You got that look. The woman smiled, not unkindly. Where you headed? Red Valley. Rough town. Mining and cattle, mostly. Men outnumber women 10 to 1. You got people there? No. The woman studied her. You got a plan? Elena thought about the $43 in her pocket. 41 now, minus the ticket. About the fact that she'd never been more than 5 miles from the house where she was born. About how she had no skills except cooking and cleaning, no connections, no safety net. Working on it, she said. The woman laughed. Honest anyway, I like that. She reached into her basket and pulled out 2 hard-boiled eggs, handed them to Elena. Here, you look like you could use a meal. I can't. You can. Consider it a welcome gift. Frontier's hard enough without starting on an empty stomach. Elena took the eggs. Her throat felt tight. Thank you. Name's Ruth Carson. I run a boarding house in Dry Creek, next stop before Red Valley. If things don't work out for you there, come find me. I can always use help with the cooking and laundry. Elena Mercer. Well, Elena Mercer, you picked a hell of a time to head west. Territory is all kinds of stirred up right now. Cattle barons pushing out the small ranchers. Water disputes. Land grabs. Men with money buying up everything they can and forcing out anyone who can't afford to fight back. Ruth shook her head. Still, could be you'll find something out here you couldn't find back east. Freedom's got a price. But at least you get to pay it yourself instead of having someone else decide what you're worth. The words hit harder than Ruth probably meant them to. Elena looked down at the eggs in her hands. Plain things. Simple things. Given freely by a stranger who didn't expect anything in return. Is it true what they say? Elena asked. About the frontier? That a person can start over? True enough, Ruth said. Long as you're willing to work. And willing to fight when it comes to it. Out here, nobody gives you anything, but nobody can take away what you earn either. Not without a hell of a battle. Elena thought about Lydia's frozen face, about her father's satisfied smile, about 26 years of being told she was worthless by the people who should have loved her. I can work, she said. Good. Ruth settled back in her seat. Then you'll do fine. The train rattled on. Elena ate the eggs slowly, making them last. They tasted better than anything she'd cooked in months. Maybe because she wasn't the one who'd made them. Maybe because she was eating them as a free woman, heading toward a future she got to choose instead of accept. Red Valley came into view just before noon, a collection of buildings huddled against the base of red rock cliffs that gave the town its name. The main street was wide and dusty, lined with false front buildings that tried to look more impressive than they were. A saloon, a general store, a bank, a boarding house. The kind of place that grew up fast around money, mining or cattle, didn't matter which. Men with resources built towns, and other people flooded in to service them. The train hissed to a stop. Elena stood, shouldering her bag. Ruth stood too. "You be careful," Ruth said. "Keep your money hidden and your wits about you. Men out here aren't like back east. They say what they mean, and they mean what they say. Don't trust easy, but don't be so hard you can't recognize help when it's offered." "How do I tell the difference?" Ruth smiled. "You'll figure it out. Women always do." Elena stepped off the train into heat that hit like a wall. The sun blazed down from a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Dust swirled around her boots. The air smelled different, dry and sharp, with undertones of animal and smoke and sage. She stood on the platform and looked at the town. At the people moving through it, men mostly, like Ruth had said, cowboys in dusty chaps, miners with blackened hands, a few women in practical dresses, moving with purpose from shop to shop. Elena took a breath, then another. Then she started walking. The main street was chaos. Horses tied to hitching posts, wagons rumbling past loaded with goods or ore, a dog barking at nothing. Somewhere nearby, a blacksmith's hammer rang against anvil in steady rhythm. She passed the saloon and heard piano music spilling out, mixed with rough laughter. Past the general store where a woman was arguing with the clerk about the price of flour. Past the bank where men in suits stood outside smoking cigars and discussing things in low voices that suggested money changing hands. At the end of the street, she found the boarding house. The sign said, "Rooms, meals, inquire within." Elena climbed the steps and pushed open the door. Inside was cooler, darker. A front desk stood to the left, unmanned. To the right, a dining room with mismatched tables and chairs. Somewhere deeper in the building, someone was cooking. She could smell meat and onions and coffee. "Help you?" A woman emerged from the back, wiping her hands on her apron. She was maybe 40, with graying hair pulled back severe, and a face that suggested she'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. "I need a room," Elena said. "$1 a night, 2 if you want meals included. Pay weekly and I'll knock off $1. No men in the rooms, no drinking, no noise after 10. Elena did the math. She had $41. If she paid for 2 weeks with meals, that would leave her with $13. 2 weeks to find work. 2 weeks, she said, with meals. The woman took her money and handed her a key. Top of the stairs, 3rd door on the left. Dinner's at 6, breakfast at 7. You late, you miss it. "I'm looking for work," Elena said. "Do you know anyone hiring?" The woman looked her up and down. "What can you do?" "Cook, clean, sew. I'm good with numbers." So is everyone else who gets off that train looking for work. The woman wasn't being cruel, just factual. Town's full of women who can cook and clean. What makes you different? Elena opened her mouth, closed it. What did make her different? She'd run away from home with stolen money and no plan. She had no skills anyone valued, no connections, no... "I don't quit," she heard herself say. "No matter how hard it gets, I don't quit." The woman studied her. Something shifted in her face. "Mary Collins," she said. "I run this place." "Elena Mercer." "Well, Elena Mercer, I can't hire you. I barely make enough to keep this place running, but there's a saloon down the street, the Silver Dollar. Owner's name is Jack Monroe. He's been looking for kitchen help since his last cook ran off with a cowboy 3 weeks ago. Pays not much, but it's steady. Tell him Mary sent you." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Jack's fair, but he works you hard. And the Silver Dollar draws rough trade. You'll hear things and see things that might make you wish you'd stayed wherever you came from." "I'm not going back," Elena said. Mary smiled slightly. "Good. Then you might last." Elena took her bag upstairs. The room was small, a narrow bed, a washstand, a single chair. But it had a door that locked, a window that looked out over the street, 4 walls that were hers, paid for with her own money. She sat on the bed and let herself feel it. The exhaustion, the fear, the strange, wild hope that she'd done something right by running. Then she washed her face and hands, changed into her lace-patched dress, and went to find Jack Monroe. The Silver Dollar Saloon was larger than she'd expected. The main room had a long bar running down one side, tables scattered across the floor, a piano in the corner currently being played by a man in a vest who looked half asleep. The walls were decorated with paintings of women in various states of undress that made Elena's face heat. Men filled most of the chairs, drinking, gambling, talking in voices that carried easily in the smoky air. Behind the bar stood a man Elena assumed was Jack Monroe, tall, barrel-chested, with a mustache that looked like it had its own opinions. He was pouring whiskey for 3 cowboys when Elena approached. "Help you, miss?" He didn't look up from the pour. "Mary Collins sent me. Said you need kitchen help." Now he looked. Took her in with quick, assessing eyes. "You cook?" "Yes." "How good?" "Good enough you won't lose customers." One of the cowboys laughed. "She's got spine. I like her." Jack ignored him. "Kitchen work here means long hours, lunch rush and dinner rush, sometimes feeding late-night poker games. You'll work 6 days a week, sunrise to whenever the last customer leaves. Pay is $15 a week plus meals. You get Sundays off. I catch you stealing or drinking on the job, you're done. Understood?" $15 a week. That was more than she'd expected, more than she'd ever had. "Understood," she said. "When can you start?" "Now." Jack looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Kitchen's through that door. Current situation back there is a disaster. If you can make it functional again, job's yours. If not, don't waste my time." Elena walked through the door he'd indicated and found herself in a kitchen that looked like a battlefield. Dirty pots piled in the sink, grease coating the stove, flour spilled across the counter, half-rotted vegetables in a bin, a smell that suggested something had died and been forgotten. She stood there and looked at the mess, thought about what Mary had said. "What makes you different?" She rolled up her sleeves. By the time Jack came back an hour later, the sink was empty. The stove was scrubbed. The counter was clean. She'd thrown out the rotten food and taken inventory of what was left, made a list of supplies they'd need, started a stew with what she had available. Jack looked around, looked at her. "You're hired." Elena's hands were shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion, but she nodded. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This job's going to break you or make you tougher. We'll see which." He left. Elena stirred the stew and felt something settle in her chest. It wasn't happiness exactly. It wasn't safety. But it was solid ground under her feet. A place to stand. A beginning. She worked through the evening, cooking for the men who drifted in and out. Beef and potatoes. Bread when she had time. Coffee by the pot. Simple food, but hot and plentiful. The men ate without complaining. Some of them even said thank you. By the time she stumbled back to the boarding house that night, it was past midnight. Her feet ached. Her burned palm throbbed. She smelled like grease and smoke and sweat. She fell into bed fully clothed and slept like the dead, and woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the realization that she'd done it. She'd left. She'd survived the first day. She had work. She had money coming. She had a chance. It would take her another 3 weeks to realize that running away from her father's house had been the easy part. The hard part was what came next, learning that freedom meant responsibility, that survival meant compromise, that the frontier didn't care who you'd been or what you'd suffered. It only cared what you could give. And it would take 2 months before she heard news that would change everything. News about Victor Hale's new bride. News about cattle barons and land grabs and ranchers being forced off their property. News about a scarred man named Cole Maddox who'd lost everything and was fighting to hold on to what little remained. But that night, Elena Mercer slept dreamlessly in a room that was hers, in a town where nobody knew her name or her history. And for the first time in 26 years, she felt something that might have been hope. 3 months passed before Elena heard Lydia's name again. She was elbow-deep in dishwater when Jack Monroe came into the kitchen with a newspaper folded under his arm and a look on his face that made her stomach drop. "You got family named Mercer?" he asked. Elena's hand stilled in the water. "Why?" "Article here about Victor Hale's wife. Says she was Lydia Mercer before the wedding, from some coal town back east." Elena dried her hands slowly, carefully. "What does it say?" Jack hesitated. That's how she knew it was bad. Jack Monroe didn't hesitate. He'd once thrown out 3 armed cowboys without breaking a sweat. He'd talked down a drunk miner waving a knife. He didn't flinch at blood or violence or the casual cruelty that seemed to seep through the saloon doors with the evening crowd. But now he hesitated. Says she settled in well at the Hale Ranch. Says Victor's pleased with his new bride. Says, he stopped. Says she's expecting. 6 months along. The plate Elena had been holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Jack didn't comment on it. He just set the newspaper on the counter and walked out, closing the door behind him with unusual gentleness. Elena stood there, staring at the broken pieces. 6 months. Lydia had been married for 3 months, which meant she did the math twice because her brain didn't want to accept it the first time, which meant Lydia had gotten pregnant immediately. Or maybe before the wedding, though that seemed impossible given how sheltered their father had kept her. Either way, Lydia was carrying Victor Hale's child. Lydia was trapped. Elena picked up the newspaper with shaking hands and read the article. It was short, barely a paragraph. Just a notice in the society section about prominent rancher Victor Hale and his young bride expecting their first child. The tone was congratulatory, like this was good news. The paper didn't mention that Lydia was 17, that she'd been sold like livestock, that her husband was old enough to be her grandfather, that she'd probably never wanted any of this. Elena crushed the newspaper in her fist and threw it in the stove. Then she went back to the dishes because there was nothing else to do. No way to reach Lydia. No way to help. Victor Hale's ranch was 200 miles southwest, across territory Elena didn't know with money she didn't have. And even if she could get there, what then? Walk up to a powerful man's door and demand he release his pregnant wife? She'd be lucky if they didn't shoot her for trespassing. So she washed dishes, cooked meals, served cowboys and miners and gamblers who treated her with varying degrees of respect, collected her $15 every week, and saved most of it in a tin box under her bed. Built a life that wasn't much, but was hers, and tried not to think about her sister. The trying didn't work. A week later, she was serving lunch to a group of ranchers when she heard Victor Hale's name again. "Hale's buying up everything south of Red Valley," one of them was saying. A lean man with a weathered face and angry eyes. "Offered me half what my land's worth. When I said no, my cattle started disappearing. Water stopped flowing to my east pasture. Someone diverted the creek. Last month my barn burned down." "You report it?" another rancher asked. "To who?" "Sheriff's in Hale's pocket. Territorial marshal's 3 weeks away and won't come out for a barn fire." The lean man shook his head. "I got a choice. Sell now for pennies or wait until he destroys me completely and get nothing." "What are you going to do?" "What can I do? I got a wife and 3 kids. Can't fight a man with that much money and that many guns." He took a long drink of whiskey. "I'm selling, soon as I can stomach signing the papers." Elena set their plates down and walked back to the kitchen. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. They'd gone numb. She cornered Jack during the evening lull. "Victor Hale," she said. "What do you know about him?" Jack looked up from the bar he was wiping down. "Why?" "Just tell me." He studied her face for a long moment. Then he sighed. "Richest man in 3 territories. Owns the biggest cattle ranch west of the frontier settlements. Been here 20 years, built his empire from nothing. Smart, ruthless, connected. Why people either work for him or get out of his way." "What about his wife?" Something shifted in Jack's expression. "Heard he married a young girl from back east. Heard she's pregnant." He paused. "Heard she doesn't leave the ranch much. Not sure if that's because she doesn't want to or isn't allowed to." "How do you know that?" "People talk. Cowboys who work for Hale come through here sometimes. They don't say much, but what they don't say speaks loud enough." Elena felt cold. "Is she in danger?" "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not." Jack set down his rag. "Elena, whatever you're thinking, stop. Victor Hale is not someone you want to cross. He's got money, power, and no conscience. If your sister made the mistake of marrying him, that's..." "She didn't make a mistake. She didn't have a choice." "Doesn't matter. She's his wife now. His property, legally. And there's nothing you can do about that without getting yourself killed." Elena wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. Because Jack was right. A woman married to a powerful man had no legal recourse, no protection. If Victor Hale was abusing his wife, if he was keeping her prisoner, there was no law that would intervene. Marriage gave a man almost absolute authority over his wife's body, property, and freedom, unless someone forced the issue. Elena went back to work, but the conversation rattled around in her head like stones in a jar. She couldn't stop thinking about Lydia, about her sister trapped in a house 200 miles away, carrying a child she probably didn't want, married to a man who'd bought her like cattle. The anger that had cracked open the night Elena fled her father's house split wider. 2 weeks later, a man walked into the Silver Dollar who would change everything. Elena noticed him immediately because he sat alone and didn't drink. Most men who came into the saloon did both, sat with others, and drank heavily. This one took a corner table, ordered coffee, and watched the room with eyes that suggested he was cataloging threats. He was maybe 35, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a face that might have been handsome if not for the scar running from his left eyebrow to his jaw. He wore working clothes, dusty denim, scuffed boots, a shirt that had seen better days. His hands on the coffee cup were calloused and rope-burned. Elena brought him coffee and a menu. "Kitchen serving until 9, she said. "Just coffee." His voice was rough, not unkind, just worn down by something. She left him alone. But she noticed throughout the evening that he never relaxed. His shoulders stayed tense. His eyes tracked every person who walked through the door. When a fight broke out near the bar, 2 minors arguing over a poker hand, he stood without thinking, hand going to his hip where no gun hung. Jack broke up the fight before it went anywhere. The scarred man sat back down, but his coffee had gone cold. Elena brought him a fresh cup without asking. "Thanks," he said, surprised. "You look like you need it." He almost smiled. "That obvious? You're wound tighter than the piano strings. Either you're expecting trouble or you just left it." This time he did smile, though it was more sad than amused. Little of both. Elena should have walked away. She had other customers. Jack was giving her a look that said, "Stop fraternizing." But something about the man's exhaustion felt familiar, like looking in a mirror. "I'm Elena," she said. Cole Maddox." The name meant nothing to her then. It wouldn't be until later, after everything went to hell, that she'd learned Cole Maddox had once been one of the most successful ranchers in the valley, that he'd lost his wife to fever 8 years ago and his daughter to his own grief shortly after, that he'd spent the better part of a decade drinking himself numb until the bottle couldn't hold him anymore, that he'd sobered up 2 years ago and been fighting ever since to hold on to the small piece of land that was all he had left of the life he'd destroyed. "You passing through?" she asked. "Hoping to stay, if I can." He took a drink of coffee. "You hear anything about work? Ranch work, farm work? Anything. I'm not picky. Ranches around here aren't hiring much. Most of them are barely holding on." "Because of Victor Hale?" Elena's attention sharpened. "You know him?" "Know of him. He's been buying up land south of here. Heard he's moving north now." Cole's jaw tightened. "Heard he's got methods for convincing people to sell. You sound like you've got experience with that." "Some." He didn't elaborate. "I've got a small place about 15 miles northeast. 100 acres, most of it decent grazing land. Creek runs through it. Been in my family 20 years. Hale offered to buy it 3 months ago. I said no." "Let me guess. Bad things started happening." Cole looked at her sharply. "You hear something?" "I hear a lot of things. Cowboys talk, ranchers talk. Men get drunk and say things they wouldn't say sober." She lowered her voice. "Hale's been doing this for years. Finds land he wants, makes a low offer, and when people refuse, he makes their lives hell until they break." "How do you know?" "Because I listen." Elena glanced toward the bar where Jack was watching them. "And because Hale's wife is my sister." Cole's eyes widened. "Jesus." "Don't." Elena's voice came out harder than she meant. "Don't say anything sympathetic. I can't. I'm not thinking about that right now." They sat in silence for a moment. The saloon noise swirled around them, laughter, piano music, the clink of glasses. Normal sounds from a normal evening in a town that thought itself civilized. "Why are you here?" Elena asked finally. "In town, I mean. If your ranch is 15 miles out." "Needed supplies, needed to think." Cole ran a hand through his hair. 2 nights ago, someone cut my fences. 50 head of cattle wandered off before I could round them up. Only found 30. Lost the other 20, probably stolen. That's half my herd gone. I can't survive another hit like that." "You go to the sheriff?" "Sheriff told me to be more careful with my fences." Cole's voice was flat. Didn't even pretend to investigate. "Because Hale pays him better than the county does." "Yeah." Cole stared into his coffee. "I've been trying to figure out my options. Sell for whatever Hale's willing to give me and start over somewhere else. or stay and fight a battle I can't win. What do you want to do? He looked up at her. I want to fight. That land's all I have left. He stopped. It's all I have left of anything that matters. But wanting something doesn't make it smart. Elena thought about Lydia, about her father's house, about every time she'd wanted something and been told to be practical instead. Sometimes the smart choice is the wrong one, she said. And sometimes the right choice gets you killed. Maybe, but at least you die standing. Cole studied her. You always this intense? Only since I ran away from home 3 months ago with stolen money and no plan. He laughed, short and surprised. How's that working out? Still alive, still employed, haven't been arrested. Elena shrugged. Could be worse. Could be better. Could be a lot of things. She picked up his empty cup. You want more coffee, or are you going to sit here looking tragic all night? This time his smile reached his eyes. One more. Then I should head back before it gets too dark to see the road. She brought him another cup and left him alone. But she thought about their conversation while she worked. Thought about a man fighting to keep land that powerful people wanted to take. Thought about her sister trapped in a marriage she couldn't escape. Thought about all the small cruelties that built empires. The stolen cattle, the cut fences, the diverted water, the burned barns. Thought about what it might take to push back. Cole left an hour later with a nod in her direction. Elena didn't think she'd see him again. Men like that, proud, stubborn, fighting losing battles, usually didn't last long. Either they gave up or got crushed. The frontier didn't reward stubbornness, it rewarded flexibility, knowing when to bend. But 2 weeks later he walked back into the Silver Dollar, and this time he wasn't alone. He came in during the dinner rush with 3 other men, ranchers by the look of them, weathered faces, working hands, clothes that had seen labor. They took a table in the back and talked in low voices while Elena brought them food. She caught pieces of their conversation, words like organize and collective and strength in numbers. They were planning something, some kind of alliance against Hale. It wouldn't work. Elena knew that without hearing the details. Hale had too much money, too much influence, too many men willing to do violence for pay. A handful of struggling ranchers couldn't stand against that, but they were going to try anyway. She brought them coffee and kept her observations to herself. It wasn't her fight. She had her own problems. Keeping her job, saving money, surviving in a town that chewed up and spit out people who weren't tough enough. Except Cole looked up when she set down the pot and said, Elena, got a minute? She glanced toward the kitchen where dishes were piling up. Not really. This'll be quick. He gestured to the empty chair. Please. She sat because something in his voice made it hard to refuse. These are neighbors of mine, Cole said. Thomas Brennan, Robert Finch, Samuel Hayes. We're all facing the same problem. Hale wants our land and he's using everything short of murder to get it. Short of murder so far, Thomas Brennan said darkly. He was older, maybe 50, with a beard gone mostly gray. Give it time. We're forming a coalition, Cole continued, pooling resources, watching each other's backs, standing together. Harder to pick us off one by one if we're organized. Good luck with that, Elena said. You don't think it'll work? I think Victor Hale didn't build an empire by being easy to intimidate. She looked at each of them in turn. How many men does he have working for him? 50? 100? How many do you have? Between the 4 of us? Robert Finch shifted uncomfortably. Maybe a dozen hired hands. Some of our sons. So you're outnumbered 5 to 1 at least. Plus he's got the sheriff. Plus he's got money to hire lawyers, buy judges, drag you through courts until you're bankrupt from legal fees alone. Elena shook her head. You can't beat him with force. He's got too much of it. Then what would you suggest? Cole's voice held no sarcasm. He was genuinely asking. Elena opened her mouth, closed it, because she didn't have an answer. She'd been so focused on surviving day to day that she hadn't thought beyond keeping her head down and staying out of trouble. But now Cole and these men were looking at her like she might have something useful to say, like her opinion mattered. It was such a foreign feeling she almost laughed. You need leverage, she said slowly. Something Hale wants more than he wants your land, or something he's afraid to lose. Like what? I don't know. His reputation, his business connections, his... She stopped. His wife. The words fell into sudden silence. His wife? Samuel Hayes frowned. What do you mean? Elena's mind was racing now. Hale's not just a rancher. He's a businessman. He sells cattle to buyers back east, right? Big contracts with meat processors, railway companies. His reputation matters to those deals. If people thought he was, she searched for the right word, unstable, dangerous. If buyers thought doing business with him came with risks, they might look elsewhere. How does his wife factor into that? Cole was watching her carefully. Because she's 17 years old and terrified. The words came out harder than Elena meant them to. Because he keeps her isolated on that ranch where nobody sees her. Because from what I've heard, she's not there by choice. If people knew that, if the right people knew that, it might make them uncomfortable. Might make them wonder what kind of man Victor Hale really is. You want us to spread rumors about a man's marriage? Thomas shook his head. It's not rumors if it's true. Elena leaned forward. My sister didn't want to marry him. She was sold to him by my father for $300. She's pregnant and trapped and probably scared out of her mind. That's not gossip. That's fact. Even if that's true, Robert said carefully, exposing it could make things worse for her. Hale might... He didn't finish, but the implication hung heavy. He might hurt her. He might punish her. He might make her suffer for the embarrassment. Elena sat back. The fight drained out of her as quickly as it had flared up. You're right. Forget I said anything. I didn't say forget it. Cole was still watching her. I said we need to think it through, make sure we're not putting innocent people in danger. Everyone's already in danger, Elena said tiredly. At least this way the danger might accomplish something. How would we even do it? We can't exactly walk up to cattle buyers and say, hey, did you know Hale's marriage is a mess? Samuel looked skeptical. That's not how men talk to each other. No, but women do. Elena found herself speaking before she'd fully thought it through. Women talk about marriages, about families, about who's treating who wrong. If the wives of Hale's business partners heard certain things, if they got concerned, they might talk to their husbands. Plant seeds of doubt. You know any wives of cattle buyers? Thomas asked. No, but I know how to find out who they are and where they live. Elena gestured around the saloon. You'd be surprised what you can learn serving drinks to men who think you're furniture. They sat in silence for a moment, each of them thinking. Finally, Cole said, It's risky. Everything is. If Hale finds out you're behind it, he won't, because I'm nobody, just a cook in a saloon. Why would he notice me? Cole didn't look convinced, but he nodded slowly. Let us think about it. Talk it through with our families. This isn't a decision to make light. A crash from the front of the saloon cut him off. Everyone turned to see a man stumbling through the door, blood running down his face. He collapsed against the bar. Jack! He gasped. Jack Monroe! Jack was already moving. He caught the man before he fell. What happened? Hale's men, they burned the Garrett place. Burned it to the ground. Michael Garrett tried to stop them, and The man choked. They beat him. Bad. He's alive, but he didn't get to finish. 3 more men burst through the door, these ones armed. They weren't Hale's men. Elena could tell by their worn clothes and desperate eyes. These were ranchers, friends of the Garretts. We need help, one of them said. Anyone who can ride. The Garrett place is still burning, and Hale's men are still there, making sure nothing's left. The saloon erupted. Men were standing, shouting, reaching for weapons. Jack was trying to keep order, but it was chaos. Cole and his companions were already on their feet. We're going, Cole said. Not to Elena, to his friends, to anyone listening. You'll be outnumbered, Elena found herself saying. Probably. Cole met her eyes. But sometimes the smart choice is the wrong one. You said that. Then they were gone, swept up in the wave of men heading for the door. Elena stood there in the sudden quiet of the half-empty saloon, her heart hammering. Jack walked over, wiping blood off his hands. You should go home. What? It's going to get worse before it gets better. Hale just escalated things. Men are going to die tonight, probably. I don't want you here when the bodies start coming back. Elena looked toward the door, toward the darkness outside where men were riding toward fire and violence and maybe death. I can help, she said. If people get hurt, you're not a doctor. No, but I can cook, I can boil water, I can... She didn't know what she could do, just that going home and hiding felt impossible. I can't just leave. Jack studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. Fine. But you stay in the kitchen. If fighting comes here, you run. Understood? Understood. She spent the next 3 hours making coffee and preparing bandages from torn sheets. Men trickled back in small groups, some with news, some with wounds, some with both. The Garrett ranch was destroyed. Michael Garrett was alive, but barely. Hale's men had retreated when the ranchers showed up in force, but not before making their point. This was what happened when you said no to Victor Hale. Cole came back around midnight. He had blood on his shirt, not his own, he said when Elena rushed over. He sat at the bar and accepted the coffee she poured with hands that shook slightly. Michael's going to lose the ranch, he said. Even if he survives his injuries, he's got nothing left to save. House burned, barn burned, cattle scattered or stolen. What about the sheriff? Cole laughed bitterly. Sheriff said it was probably an accident, a lamp knocked over. Bad luck.
Bad luck? Elena's voice was flat. That's what he said. Cole drained the coffee. We can't win this way. Direct confrontation just gives Hale an excuse to escalate. He looked at her. We need what you said, leverage, something that makes him vulnerable. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. But I think we'd better figure it out fast. He stood, leaving coins on the bar. I'll be back in a few days, when things calm down. We need to talk, really talk. About what?
About what it takes to fight a war without starting one. He left before she could respond. Elena watched him go and felt something shift inside her, something that had been dormant for months, maybe years, starting to wake up. She'd come west to escape, to survive, to build a life on her own terms. But maybe survival wasn't enough. Maybe building a life meant burning down the structures that made it impossible for other people to have one. She thought about Lydia, about the Garrett family, about Cole and his neighbors fighting a battle they couldn't win with the weapons they had. Maybe it was time to find different weapons. When she walked back to the boarding house that night, the sky to the southwest glowed orange. The Garrett ranch still burning, a warning written in fire and smoke. Elena stared at it until her eyes watered. Then she went inside, locked her door, and didn't sleep. Cole came back 5 days later with a proposition that sounded like madness. Elena was cleaning tables when he walked in, mid-afternoon when the saloon was mostly empty except for a few day drinkers nursing hangovers. He looked worse than last time, tired, with dark circles under his eyes and dust coating every inch of him like he'd ridden hard without stopping. He sat at the bar and waited until she finished wiping down the last table before speaking. I need to ask you something, he said, and I need you to hear me out before you say no. Elena set down her rag. That's not a promising start. It's not a promising situation. He took off his hat and turned it in his hands. Hale made another offer on my land yesterday, through his lawyer this time. Half what he offered 3 months ago. Said if I don't accept by the end of the week, the offer expires and I take my chances. You gonna sell? No. The word came out flat. Final. But I need to protect what's mine, and I've been thinking about what you said, about leverage, about making Hale vulnerable. I don't know how to do that, Cole. I was talking out of frustration. Maybe, but you were right about one thing. We can't beat him with force. We need something else, something he can't fight with money or guns. Cole looked at her directly. We need to become people he can't afford to destroy. Elena frowned. What does that mean? It means making ourselves legitimate, protected. Making it so if he comes after us, he's not just attacking struggling ranchers nobody cares about. He's attacking people with legal standing, people who matter. How do you propose doing that? Cole set his hat on the bar, took a breath. Marry me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Elena stared at him. What? I know how it sounds, but listen, if we're married, my land becomes our land, community property. If something happens to me, it doesn't revert to being available for purchase. It goes to my widow, you. That makes it harder for Hale to acquire. He'd have to deal with you and your... He stopped. I'm what? You're not from here. You've got no debts to him, no obligations, no history he can use against you. And if we're married, we can pool resources. Your income from here, what's left of my cattle sales. We'd have more leverage together than apart. Elena's mind was spinning. You want to marry me for strategic reasons? Yes. That's insane. Probably. Cole didn't look away. But I'm out of options. And I think you understand what it's like to be backed into a corner by powerful people who think they own you. She did understand. That was the problem. She understood it so well her hands had started shaking. This is about more than just protecting your land, she said slowly. You want to build some kind of, what? Alliance? Coalition? Something like that. There are 12 ranches in the valley that Hale's targeting. If even half of us organize, create legal ties that make us harder to separate, marriages, partnerships, shared deeds, we become a knot he can't untangle easily. Cole leaned forward. He's used to dealing with isolated families, people with no backup. We changed that dynamic. We changed the game. And you chose me because you're smart, because you understand what's happening, because you've already lost family to Hale, and I don't think you're going to stand by and watch it happen to more people. He paused. And because I need someone I can trust, and trust's hard to come by right now. Elena wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. You barely know me. I know enough. You ran from a bad situation with nothing. You survived. You're still here. That tells me everything I need to know about your spine. This is crazy. Yeah. Cole picked up his hat. Think about it. You don't have to answer now, but I need to know by tomorrow. That's when Hale's deadline hits. He stood to leave and Elena heard herself say, wait. He turned back. If I agreed to this, and I'm not saying I am, what would it actually look like? This marriage. Cole sat back down. Practical. We'd live on the ranch. You'd keep working here if you wanted, or help with the ranch work if you preferred. Separate rooms. No expectations beyond what we agree to. It'd be a partnership, not, he gestured vaguely, not what marriages usually are. And if we can't stand each other, then we'd be like most married couples, I guess, except we'd know that going in. Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. You're really selling this. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm trying to be honest. Cole met her eyes. I don't have anything to offer except hard work and a fight that might get us both killed. But if you want a chance to hit back at the man who took your sister, this is it. We might not win, probably won't, but at least we'd go down fighting. There it was. The real reason. Not the land or the strategy or the coalition, the chance to hurt Victor Hale, to make him pay for even a fraction of what he'd taken. Elena thought about Lydia, about the last time she'd seen her sister, frozen at that table while men discussed her like livestock, about the newspaper article that said she was pregnant and settled and happy, about all the lies that got told when powerful men wanted to hide what they'd done. I need to talk to Jack, she said. Make sure I'd still have a job if... She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't make it real yet. Fair enough. And I need to understand what we'd actually be doing, not the broad strokes, the details. If I'm going to put my name on a legal document, I want to know what I'm signing. Agreed. And Elena stopped. Why me specifically? There have to be other women. Women from here who understand ranching, who have skills that would actually help. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because everyone else here has family, connections, debts, favors owed. They're tied into the community in ways that make them vulnerable. You're not. You came here alone and you're still alone. That makes you dangerous to someone like Hale. You've got nothing to lose. That's a depressing way to look at it. It's a true way to look at it. He stood again. Tomorrow. That's all the time I've got. Talk to Jack. Think it through. But tomorrow, I need an answer. This time when he walked out, Elena didn't stop him. She found Jack in the back office doing paperwork. He looked up when she knocked. Whatever Cole Maddox proposed, the answer should be no, he said. Elena blinked. How did you... I've been running this place 15 years. I know when a man's about to ask something desperate. Jack set down his pen. What was it? Money? Help with a fight? Because either way, getting involved with the Hale situation is a good way to end up dead. He asked me to marry him. Jack's expression didn't change. That's even stupider than I expected. It's strategic to protect his land, create legal complications for Hale. It's suicide with paperwork. Jack leaned back in his chair. Elena, you're good at your job. You work hard. You don't cause trouble. The customers like you. But if you marry into this mess, I can't protect you. Can't keep you on here if Hale decides to make an example. You understand that? I understand. And you're considering it anyway. His wife is my sister. His wife is pregnant and trapped 200 miles away. How does marrying Cole Maddox help her? Elena didn't have a good answer for that. It hurts him. Hale. Makes his life harder. That's something. It's revenge, not justice, and revenge gets people killed. Jack's voice wasn't unkind, just tired. I've seen this play out before. A man like Hale doesn't back down from a fight. He escalates, burns things, hurts people. You put yourself in his crosshairs, you better be prepared for what comes next. I am. Are you? Jack studied her. Because I don't think you've thought this through. You came here running from one bad situation. What makes you think walking into another one is the answer? Because this time I get to choose it, Elena said. This time, I'm not the one being sold. I'm the one making the deal. Jack sighed. If you do this, you can keep your job as long as it's safe. The second Hale makes it dangerous for my other employees, you're done. That's not negotiable. That's fair. No, it's not. None of this is fair. But it's what we've got. He picked up his pen again. Go think about it some more. Make sure this is what you want, because once you sign those papers, you can't unsign them. Elena walked back to the boarding house as the sun was setting. The sky was doing that thing it did sometimes in the west, turning shades of orange and purple that didn't seem real, like someone had painted it drunk. In her room, she pulled out the tin box from under her bed, counted her money. $213. She'd been saving for what? She didn't even know. Some vague idea of independence, of options. Options like buying into a fight that wasn't hers. Except it was hers, wasn't it? The moment Lydia got sold to Victor Hale, it became hers. She lay awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, all the ways it probably would go wrong, but also thinking about what Cole had said, about becoming people who mattered, about creating knots too complicated to untangle, about fighting back. By morning, she'd made her decision. She found Cole at the general store, loading supplies into a wagon. He saw her coming and stopped, waiting. I have conditions, Elena said without preamble. Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Relief, maybe. Name them. I keep my job at the Silver Dollar as long as Jack allows it. I keep my own money, what I've saved, what I earn. We draw up a legal agreement about the land, what happens if one of us dies or if this partnership ends. And if we're going to fight Hale, we do it smart. No rushing in, no getting people killed for pride. Agreed. I'm serious, Cole. I'm not doing this so you can play hero and get yourself shot. If we're partners, we plan together, decide together. No going off on your own. I understand. Do you? Because you've got that look men get when they think they're the only ones capable of making hard choices. Cole's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. You done? One more thing. If I find out you've lied to me about any of this, about the land, about the situation, about anything, I'm gone. No second chances. We clear? Crystal. Then yes, I'll marry you. Cole exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, Elena's voice went up. Hale's deadline is sunset tomorrow. We need to file the marriage certificate before then so it's legally binding when he comes calling. Cole pulled a folded paper from his pocket. I already drew up the partnership agreement, had the lawyer in town look it over. It's fair, or as fair as I know how to make it. Elena took the paper and read through it. It was surprisingly thorough. Division of property, rights of survivorship, clauses about dissolving the partnership. She found herself impressed despite the circumstances. You really thought this through. I had a lot of sleepless nights. Cole shifted his weight. I know it's fast. I know it's not. I know this isn't how anyone imagines getting married. If you need more time, I don't. Elena folded the paper and handed it back. Tomorrow. Where? Town clerk's office. 10 in the morning. We need 2 witnesses. I'll ask Jack and Mary Collins. I'll bring Thomas Brennan. Cole looked at her for a long moment. Thank you. I know that's inadequate, but thank you. Thank me if we survive this. They stood there awkwardly for a moment, 2 people who'd just agreed to legally bind their lives together without any of the usual reasons people did such things. No romance, no future children promised, No shared dreams or histories, just a mutual enemy and a desperate plan. Finally, Cole said, I should get back. Ranch doesn't run itself. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, Elena agreed. She watched him drive the wagon out of town and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. The wedding, if you could call it that, took 11 minutes. Elena wore her cleanest dress. Cole wore the same clothes he'd worn the day before, minus some of the dust. They stood in the town clerk's office with Jack and Mary on one side, Thomas Brennan on the other, and repeated words that sounded hollow in the dusty little room. The clerk pronounced them married. Cole signed the certificate. Elena signed. The witnesses signed. And just like that, Elena Mercer became Elena Maddox. She felt exactly the same as before, which was somehow disappointing. They filed the certificate at the county recorder's office, paid the fee, walked out into sunshine that felt too bright for the occasion. Well, Cole said, that's done. That's done, Elena agreed. I need to ride back to the ranch. Make sure... He stopped. You're coming with me. You should come with me. If you're ready, if you want to get your things first, I'll get my things and meet you at the edge of town in an hour. She went back to the boarding house and packed her few belongings. Mary Collins watched from the doorway. You're really doing this, Mary said. Apparently. You know it's crazy. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. Mary crossed her arms. Cole Maddox is a good man, from what I hear. But he's fighting a war he can't win. You just signed up for the losing side. Maybe. Elena folded her mother's shawl and placed it carefully in her bag. Or maybe having one more person on that side changes the odds. You're one woman, Elena. What do you think you can do against Victor Hale? Elena straightened and looked at Mary directly. I don't know yet, but I'm tired of watching powerful men destroy people and calling it business. I'm tired of... Her voice cracked slightly. I'm tired of doing nothing. Mary's expression softened. Your sister. My sister, the Garretts. Everyone Hale's crushed because he could, because nobody stopped him. Elena picked up her bag. Maybe I can't stop him either, but at least I'll know I tried. She paid Mary for her remaining days at the boarding house even though Mary protested, said goodbye to the room that had been her first real home, walked down to Jack's saloon one last time. Jack was behind the bar, as usual. So you're really leaving, he said. I'll be back to work Monday, if you'll still have me. We'll see how long that lasts. Jack poured 2 shots of whiskey, pushed one toward her. To stupid choices. Elena took the shot. The whiskey burned going down. To stupid choices. You be careful out there. And if things go bad, if you need to run, you come here first. I'll help you get out. Thank you, Jack. Don't thank me. Just don't die. I hate training new cooks. She left the saloon and found Cole waiting at the edge of town with 2 horses, his and a smaller mare he'd apparently borrowed. You ride? He asked. Not well. Good enough. He helped her mount, secured her bag, and they started north out of town. The ranch was 3 hours away at an easy pace. They didn't talk much during the ride. Elena was too busy concentrating on staying in the saddle, and Cole seemed lost in his own thoughts. The landscape rolled past, scrub grass and red rock, occasional clusters of trees marking creek beds, sky that went on forever. By the time they arrived, the sun was starting to sink toward the horizon. The ranch was smaller than Elena expected. A house that needed paint, a barn with a sagging roof, corrals holding maybe 20 cattle. A windmill creaked in the breeze, pumping water into a trough. It looked tired, used up, like it had been beautiful once and still remembered how. It's not much, Cole said, dismounting, but it's solid. House is weatherproof, at least. Well, doesn't run dry even in summer. Elena slid off her horse less gracefully than she'd have liked. It's fine. I fixed up the spare room for you. East side, gets morning sun. Furniture's not great, but... Cole. Elena turned to face him. It's fine. I wasn't expecting a palace. He nodded, looked relieved. Right, okay. Let me show you around. The tour was brief. The house had 3 rooms, a main room that served as kitchen and living space, and 2 small bedrooms off either side. There was a lean-to out back that served as a washroom. The barn housed 2 horses, some chickens, and equipment in various states of disrepair. Most of the cattle are in the south pasture right now, Cole explained. I move them every few weeks depending on where the grass is best. Water's been good this year, at least. That's one thing Hale hasn't managed to screw with yet. Yet. Yeah. Cole's jaw tightened. I've got traps set up at the creek intake. Bells that'll ring if anyone tries to block the flow. And I ride the fence line every other day checking for cuts.
That's how you spend your time? Checking fences and waiting for the next attack? That's how everyone spends their time when they're being squeezed. He led her back toward the house. Thomas Brennan sleeps with a rifle next to his bed. Robert Finch doesn't let his kids go into town anymore without an armed escort. We're all just waiting. That's not sustainable.
No, it's not. Cole stopped at the porch, which is why we need to change tactics, and we need to do it soon before more people break. Inside, Elena unpacked her few things while Cole made coffee. The spare room was exactly as advertised. Small, basic, but clean. Someone had made up the bed with blankets that smelled like cedar. A small table stood under the window with a lamp and an empty water pitcher. It wasn't the boarding house. It wasn't anywhere she'd been before. But it was hers now, at least in some legal sense. She joined Cole in the main room and accepted the coffee he offered. "So," she said, "what's the actual plan here? We're married. The land's legally complicated now. What's next?" Cole sat at the table and pulled out a folded map. "Next, we need to make Hale aware of what we've done. Make it clear that coming after my land means coming after both of us. And we need to start connecting the other ranchers, creating legal partnerships, shared resources, overlapping claims. Make it so Hale can't pick us off one by one without creating massive legal tangles. He'll just hire lawyers to untangle them. Probably, but it buys time, and time is what we need." Cole pointed to various marks on the map. "These are the ranches still holding out. 12 total. If even half of them agree to coordinate with us, we've got the start of something. A coalition. And the other half? Some will sell, some will break. That's the reality." He looked at her. "But some will fight, and those are the ones we build around." Elena studied the map, thought about what it represented: families, livelihoods, generations of work. All of it under threat from one man's greed. "We need to document everything," she said slowly. "Every attack, every threat, every suspicious accident. Build a record that can't be ignored." Who would we show it to? Sheriffs corrupt? Territorial marshals too far away to care? Maybe, but newspapers aren't. Elena looked up. There are papers back east that love frontier stories. Cattle baron terrorizing honest ranchers? That's the kind of thing that sells copies. If we could get the story out, if we could make Hale's tactics public, it might bring pressure he can't buy off. Cole's eyes widened slightly. That could work if we could prove it. Then we gather proof. We talk to everyone he's hurt. We document dates, times, witnesses. We make it impossible for him to claim it's all coincidence or bad luck. They spent the next hour planning, their coffee going cold as they sketched out a strategy that felt both impossible and necessary. By the time they finished, night had fallen completely. Cole stood and stretched. "I should check the stock one more time before bed. Make sure," he gestured vaguely. "Make sure everything's secure. I'll clean up here." He paused at the door. "Elena, thank you for doing this. For all of it." "We're partners now," Elena said. "That's what partners do." After he left, she washed the coffee cups and looked around the small house that was now technically her home. It was strange. All of it was strange. 3 days ago, she'd been a cook in a saloon. Now she was a rancher's wife with a legal claim to land and a target painted on her back. She should have been terrified. She was. But she was also something else. Something that felt dangerously close to alive. The next morning, they rode out to visit Thomas Brennan's ranch. He lived 5 miles south with his wife Catherine and their 3 children. The house was larger than Cole's, but showed similar signs of stress: peeling paint, a garden going to weeds, children who watched strangers with wary eyes. Catherine Brennan served them coffee in a kitchen that had been scrubbed within an inch of its life. "So you're the new Mrs. Maddox," she said, studying Elena with frank curiosity. "Heard you married quick." "We did." "Smart or desperate?" "Both," Elena said honestly. Catherine laughed, short and sharp. "At least you're honest about it. Thomas says you've got ideas about organizing, making things harder for Hale."
We're trying. Good. Catherine's smile disappeared. Because I'm tired of being scared in my own home, tired of jumping every time I hear hoofbeats, tired of watching my husband ride out every morning, not knowing if he'll come back. She set down her cup with force. If you've got a plan that involves fighting back, you count me in. Over the next week, they visited every ranch on Cole's list. Some doors opened, some didn't. But slowly, carefully, they started building something.
Robert Finch agreed to combine his cattle sales with Cole's, making it harder for Hale to undercut their prices. Samuel Hayes offered to share water rights in exchange for help repairing his damaged fences. The Brennans started keeping detailed records of every suspicious incident on their land. It wasn't much, but it was a foundation. And then 3 weeks after the wedding, everything changed. Cole came back from town with news that made Elena's blood run cold. Victor Hale was planning a cattle auction, a massive sale of stock to buyers coming in from 3 territories. And he'd invited all the local ranchers, including the ones he'd been trying to destroy. "It's a trap," Elena said immediately. "Probably." Cole set the invitation on the table. It was printed on expensive paper with elaborate lettering. But it's also an opportunity. Opportunity for what? For him to kill everyone who's opposed him in one place? Opportunity to see his operation, his records, his business dealings. Cole met her eyes. Everything we need to prove what he's doing would be in his ranch house during that auction, while everyone's distracted. Elena stared at him. "You want to break into Victor Hale's house during his cattle auction and steal his records?" "I want to get proof we can use." "Yes." "That's insane." "It's necessary." Cole leaned forward. "Elena, we can't keep going like this, playing defense, waiting for the next attack. We need something that changes the game. Those records could do it. Business ledgers showing bribery, threats, fraud, correspondence with the sheriff proving corruption, evidence of the land grabs, the violence, all of it. And if we get caught? Then we die, probably. He said it matter-of-factly. But if we don't try, we die slowly, lose everything piece by piece until there's nothing left. Elena thought about Lydia, about the newspaper article that had painted her sister's forced marriage as a romance, about all the lies that powerful men told and everyone believed because who was going to contradict them? "How would we even get in?" she asked. Cole's expression shifted, became something harder. "I know someone who used to work at Hale's ranch. Quit last year after seeing things he couldn't stomach. He's got knowledge of the layout, the security, the schedule, if he'll help us." "That's a big if. Everything about this is a big if." Cole pulled out the map again. "But I think we can do it. During the auction, most of Hale's men will be outside managing the sale. Security will be focused on preventing theft of cattle, not protecting the house. If we time it right, we?" Elena interrupted. "I'm coming with you? You speak fluent record keeping. I don't. You'll know what we're looking for. I'll just know what looks expensive enough to steal." He met her eyes. "We're partners. That means we do this together." They planned for 2 weeks. Talked to Cole's contact, a former Hale ranch hand named David, who drew the maps of the house layout and described the filing system Hale used. Practiced getting in and out of buildings without making noise. Gathered supplies, dark clothes, bags for carrying documents, weapons in case everything went wrong. Elena kept working at the saloon, listening to conversations, gathering information about the auction. The talk was that Hale had invited buyers from as far as Chicago, that the sale would be massive, thousands of head of cattle, contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, that it was Hale's way of proving he was untouchable. The night before the auction, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in her small room listening to the wind and thinking about all the ways this could fail. They could get caught. They could find nothing useful. Someone could get killed. She could lose everything she'd barely started to build. But doing nothing felt worse. The auction was set for noon. Cole and Elena rode out at dawn, taking the long route that would let them approach Hale's ranch from the north, away from where guests would be arriving. They tied their horses in a wash 2 miles from the house and waited. Around 11, they saw the wagons start arriving. Buyers in expensive coats, ranchers in their Sunday best, spectators who'd come just to see the show. The sound of cattle and men drifted across the prairie. "Ready?" Cole asked. Elena checked the bag at her hip. "No." "Good. Me neither." He pulled his bandana up over his nose. Let's go. They moved fast and low across the scrubland, using the gullies and rock formations for cover. The ranch house came into view, a sprawling structure that spoke of money and power. Around it, men milled everywhere. But they were focused on the cattle pens, on the auction platform that had been erected, on the buyers examining stock. Nobody was watching the house. They reached the back entrance where David had said there'd be a kitchen door usually left unlocked during busy times. Cole tested it. It opened. They slipped inside. The house was bigger inside than it looked from outside. Polished wood floors, expensive furniture, paintings on the walls that probably cost more than Elena had made in her entire life. It felt obscene. All this wealth built on broken families and stolen land. Offices upstairs, Cole whispered. Second door on the left. They climbed the stairs, every creak of wood sounding impossibly loud despite the noise from outside. The hallway was lined with more paintings, more evidence of Hale's fortune. The office was exactly where David said it would be. Cole tried the door, locked. He pulled out the tools David had given them and worked at the lock while Elena kept watch. It took 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours before she heard the click. Inside, the office was organized chaos. A massive desk covered in papers, filing cabinets lining the walls, ledgers stacked on shelves. Elena felt her heart sink. It would take hours to go through all of this. Take what looks important, Cole said. We've got maybe 20 minutes before someone notices we're here. They worked quickly, pulling files at random, stuffing papers into their bags. Land deeds with signatures that looked coerced. Letters between Hale and the sheriff discussing problem properties. Ledgers showing payments to men for security work that aligned with dates when ranches burned. It was all there. Everything they needed. Everything that proved what Hale had been doing. Elena was reaching for another file when she heard voices in the hallway. She froze. Met Cole's eyes. He gestured toward the window. The voices got closer. Male. Angry. Told him we needed more security on the house. But no, he's too focused on showing off for the buyers. The door handle rattled. Cole grabbed Elena's arm and pulled her toward the window. It was 2 stories up, but there was a porch roof below. They'd have to jump for it. The door opened. Elena didn't think. She went through the window first, landed hard on the roof tiles, felt one crack under her weight. Cole came after her, their bags bouncing against their sides. Hey, stop! They ran across the roof and jumped to the ground. Elena's ankle twisted when she landed, and pain shot up her leg, but she kept moving. Cole grabbed her hand and they ran for the scrubland, for cover, for anywhere that wasn't here. Behind them, shouts erupted. Someone fired a shot that went wide. They reached the wash where they'd left the horses and mounted without stopping to check if they were being followed. Elena's ankle screamed when she swung into the saddle, but she ignored it. They rode hard for an hour before Cole finally slowed. You hurt? He asked. Ankle. It's fine. It wasn't fine, but it wasn't broken either. Did we get enough? Cole patted his bag. We got something. Whether it's enough, we'll find out. They made it back to Cole's ranch as the sun was setting. Inside, they spread the stolen documents across the table and started reading. It was all there. Years of systematic corruption, bribes paid to the sheriff, documented in neat columns, threats made to ranchers who wouldn't sell, detailed in correspondence, even evidence of the Garrett Ranch burning, a payment made to J.B. for property persuasion on the exact date Michael Garrett's house went up in flames. This is it, Elena said, her hands shaking. This is everything we need. Now we just have to figure out how to use it without getting killed, Cole said. They stayed up all night copying the most damaging documents, hiding the originals in different locations around the ranch. If Hale's men came looking, they wouldn't find everything in one place. By dawn, Elena's hands were cramping from writing and her ankle had swollen to twice its normal size. But they had copies. They had proof. They had ammunition. The question was what to do with it, and whether they'd live long enough to pull the trigger. 3 days after they stole Hale's records, Elena was kneading bread dough when she heard the horses. Too many horses. Moving too fast. She wiped flour from her hands and stepped to the window. 6 riders coming up the road toward the house, dust trailing behind them like smoke. She recognized the lead horse, a black gelding that belonged to Victor Hale. Cole, she called, keeping her voice level despite her hammering heart. He came from the barn, saw the riders, and his hand went to his hip where he'd started wearing a gun. Get inside. Lock the door. I'm not hiding. Elena, we're partners. Remember? She stood her ground. Whatever they're here for, we face it together. The riders pulled up in the yard. Victor Hale dismounted slowly, deliberately. Elena had only seen him once before, that night at her father's table when he'd bought Lydia. He looked older now. Harder. Or maybe she was just seeing him clearly for the first time. Behind him, 5 men stayed mounted, armed, waiting. Maddox, Hale said. No greeting, just the name like an accusation. Hale! Cole's voice was flat. You're on my property. Your property? Hale smiled without warmth. That's an interesting claim considering you're 3 months behind on your loan payments. I'm current on all my obligations. Are you? Hale pulled a paper from his coat. Because according to the bank, you owe $1,200. Due in full by end of month or the land reverts to the lender. He paused. That would be me. I bought your loan last week. Elena felt the ground shift under her. That's not legal. Hale's eyes moved to her for the first time. And you must be the new Mrs. Maddox. Heard you two got married. Quick wedding. Almost like you were trying to complicate things. His smile widened. Didn't work. Community property laws don't protect you from legitimate debt. The debt's current, Cole repeated. I made payments to First Valley Bank every month for 3 years. To the old ownership, yes, but the loan was sold. New terms, full payment due. Hale folded the paper and put it back in his coat. I'm a reasonable man. I'll give you 2 weeks to come up with the money. If you can't, we'll handle the transfer of property peacefully. And if I refuse, then we handle it another way. Hale's voice didn't change, but something cold moved behind his eyes. I heard there was a break-in at my ranch during the auction. Someone went through my private office. Stole documents. He looked directly at Elena now. Sheriff's investigating. Might have questions for both of you soon. Elena's mouth went dry, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. We were here that day, working the ranch. Were you? It wasn't a question. Funny thing about that. One of my men saw 2 riders matching your descriptions about 5 miles from my property, around the time of the break-in. Hale shrugged. Could be coincidence, or could be theft. Either way, sheriff will sort it out. Is that a threat? Cole asked quietly. It's a fact. See, I protect my property, and I don't take kindly to people who try to steal from me, or cause problems for my business, or, he paused, or spread lies about my family. Elena's blood turned to ice. He knew. Somehow he knew about their plan to expose him. Hale stepped closer to Cole. I've been patient with you, Maddox, more patient than you deserve. But my patience has limits. You've got 2 weeks. Pay the debt or sign over the land. Those are your options. Take either one and we're done. Keep fighting, and he glanced toward Elena. Well, accidents happen on ranches. People get hurt. Would be a shame if your new wife got caught in one. Cole moved so fast, Elena almost didn't see it. One moment he was still, the next he had Hale by the coat, faces inches apart. You threaten her again, and I'll... The 5 mounted men drew their guns. Elena grabbed Cole's arm. Don't! The moment stretched. Then Cole released Hale and stepped back, hands shaking with rage. Hale adjusted his coat calmly. 2 weeks. After that, whatever happens is on you. He mounted his horse and looked down at them both. Oh, and Maddox? Your wife might want to know. My wife sends her regards. Well, she would if she was able, but she's been unwell lately, having a hard time with the pregnancy. Probably shouldn't have visitors right now. You understand? He rode off before Elena could respond, before she could ask what he meant by unwell, before she could demand to see her sister. Cole and Elena stood in the yard as the dust settled, neither speaking. Finally, Elena said, He's going to kill us. Probably. We need to move faster. Get those documents to someone, a newspaper, a federal marshal, anyone who can. He's got the sheriff. He just threatened you directly. If we go public now, we're dead before the ink dries. Cole turned toward the house. We need the 2 weeks. Need to figure out our next move. Our next move? Cole? He just told us he's going to kill us. I know. Cole's voice was hollow. I know what he said. That night, Elena couldn't eat, could barely think. She kept hearing Hale's words about Lydia. Unwell, having a hard time, shouldn't have visitors. What did that mean? Was Lydia sick? Was the baby in danger? Or was Hale doing something to her, punishing her for Elena's actions? Around midnight, Elena made a decision. She pulled on her coat and walked out to the barn where Cole was checking the horses. "I'm going to Hale's ranch," she said. Cole looked up from the saddle he was oiling. "What?" "My sister. I need to see her. Need to know she's—" Elena's voice cracked. "I need to see her." "Elena, you can't. It's suicide. Hale's men would shoot you before you got within a mile of the house. Then I'll die knowing I tried." She started saddling her horse. "I'm done hiding, done planning, done pretending any of this is working. My sister is trapped and possibly hurt, and I'm the reason Hale's angry at her, and I'm not going to—" "Stop." Cole caught her hands. "Stop. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly. For the first time in months." She pulled away. "You want to come. Come. You want to stay here and plan the next strategic move that won't work. Do that. But I'm going." "When?" "Now. Now." Cole ran a hand through his hair. "At midnight. To break into the most dangerous man in the territory's house. Again." "I'm not breaking in. I'm walking up to the door and asking to see my sister. If they say no, then I'll break in." "That's—" Cole stopped. "That's actually not the worst plan." "Really?" "No, it's still terrible. But at least you'll die with a clear conscience." He grabbed his own saddle. "Give me 10 minutes. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." They rode through darkness toward Hale's ranch, and Elena felt strangely calm. Maybe because the worst thing she could imagine was already happening. Maybe because making a choice, any choice, felt better than waiting for death to arrive on its own schedule. The ranch house was lit up when they arrived, windows glowing in the dark. Music drifted from somewhere, a piano playing something that might have been beautiful if Elena could have heard it over her heartbeat. They tied their horses and walked to the front door. Cole knocked. A man answered, one of Hale's hired guns by the look of him. He saw them and his hand moved to his weapon. "What do you want?" "I'm here to see Lydia Hale," Elena said. "I'm her sister." The man stared. "It's midnight. I know what time it is. Boss doesn't want visitors. I don't care what he wants. I want to see my sister." The man looked at Cole. "This is how you control your wife." "She's not mine to control," Cole said evenly. "And if you're smart, you'll go ask Mrs. Hale if she wants visitors before you make this decision yourself." Something in Cole's tone must have worked because the man hesitated. Then he said, "Wait here," and closed the door. They waited. 5 minutes. 10. Elena was about to knock again when the door opened. This time an older woman stood there, a housekeeper maybe. Her face was tight with disapproval. "Mrs. Hale will see you," she said to Elena. "Alone, 5 minutes. You—" She looked at Cole. "You stay out here where we can see you." Elena followed the woman inside before Cole could argue. The house was even more opulent up close. Thick carpets, crystal chandeliers, furniture that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. The woman led her upstairs, down a hallway, to a door at the end. 5 minutes, the woman repeated. Then she knocked and opened the door. "Your sister, ma'am." Elena stepped into the room and felt her heart break. Lydia sat in a chair by the window, wrapped in a shawl despite the warmth. She looked wrong. Too thin except for her pregnant belly. Too pale. Her hair hung limp and her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion or fear or both. "Elena?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Elena crossed the room and knelt beside the chair. "I'm here. I'm right here." "You shouldn't have come if Victor finds out." "I don't care. I needed to see you." Elena took Lydia's hands. They were cold. Are you all right? He said you were unwell." Lydia's laugh was bitter and broken. "Is that what he called it?" She pulled her hands back. "I'm his prisoner, Elena. That's what I am. I can't leave this room without permission. Can't send letters. Can't see anyone. He has the housekeeper watch me constantly." Her voice dropped. "He says it's for my own good, for the baby. But really it's because he knows I'd run if I could." "Then run now. Come with me. We'll—" "I can't." Lydia's hand moved to her belly. "The baby. If I try to leave and something happens, if the baby dies because I was reckless," tears started sliding down her face. "I can't risk it. This baby's the only thing keeping Victor from treating me worse than he already does. As long as I'm carrying his heir, I have value. If I lose the baby, he wouldn't,
He would. Lydia's voice was flat. You don't know him, what he's capable of, what he's already done. She looked at Elena directly. Did you really break into his office, steal his papers? How did you? I heard him talking to his men. He's furious. Says you've made yourself a target. Says he's going to. She stopped. Elena, you need to leave. Leave this territory. Leave everything. He's going to kill you. He's going to kill your husband. And then he's going to make sure everyone knows what happens to people who cross him. I'm not leaving you. You have to, because I can't come with you, and I can't watch you die because of me. Lydia gripped Elena's hands now, tight enough to hurt. Please run while you still can. The door opened. The housekeeper stood there. Time's up. Lydia, go. Please. Lydia's voice broke. I'm begging you, just go. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to grab her sister and carry her out of this house by force. But Lydia was right. The pregnancy made that impossible. And fighting here, now, would just get them both killed. She stood slowly. I'll come back. I promise. I'll find a way to... Don't promise things you can't deliver. Lydia turned toward the window. Just survive. That's all I want. For one of us to survive. Elena walked out of that room feeling like she was leaving part of herself behind. The housekeeper led her back downstairs where Cole waited, tension written in every line of his body. They mounted their horses and rode away in silence. Halfway home, Elena started crying. Not quiet tears. Wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Cole didn't tell her to stop. He just rode beside her and let her break. By the time they reached the ranch, dawn was starting to gray the sky. Elena dismounted and stood in the yard, staring at nothing. We can't save her, she said. Not while she's pregnant. Not without risking the baby. And Hale knows that. He's using her own decency against her. Then we save her after, Cole said quietly. After the baby comes. We find a way then. If there is an after, if Hale doesn't kill us first, Cole tied up the horses. Then we make sure there's an after. We use those documents. We find someone who'll listen. We what? Elena turned on him. We go to the newspapers like we planned? Hale already knows we took his records. He's probably already warned every editor in 3 territories not to print anything. Or he'll just kill whoever tries. Her voice was rising. We can't win this. We can't save Lydia. We can't save ourselves. We stole those papers for nothing. No. Cole walked toward her. We stole them because they're proof. Because evidence matters even when it feels like it doesn't. Because thunder rumbled overhead. Storm coming. Because the alternative is giving up. And I don't think either of us knows how to do that. Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to scream that giving up sounded pretty good right now compared to waiting to die. But the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she said, what if Lydia doesn't survive? The pregnancy, I mean. What if something happens and she couldn't finish? Then we make sure Hale pays for it. Revenge won't bring her back. No, but it might stop him from destroying anyone else's sister. The storm broke that night. Rain came down in sheets, turning the dusty yard to mud. Lightning split the sky and thunder shook the windows. Elena stood at the kitchen window watching water pour off the roof and thought about all the ways this could end. A week passed, then another. The 2 weeks Hale had given them to pay the debt that didn't exist. Elena and Cole spent the time making copies of the documents, sending them to every newspaper and federal office they could think of. Most came back unopened. Some never came back at all. On the 14th day, Catherine Brennan rode up to the ranch in the rain. Thomas is dead, she said without preamble. Her face was blank, shock probably. They found him in the south pasture with a bullet in his back. Sheriff says it was an accident, hunting accident. Her voice broke on the word. My husband doesn't hunt. Elena brought her inside, made coffee, let her talk. Hale's men came the day before, Catherine said. Made another offer on our land. Thomas refused. Told them we were part of a coalition now, that we had legal protections. She laughed, high and hysterical. Legal protections, and now he's dead. I'm so sorry, Elena said. Don't be sorry, be angry.
Catherine looked at her with eyes gone hard as stone. He killed my husband. He's going to come for the rest of you, and nobody's going to stop him because nobody can stop him. She stood. I'm selling, taking my children and leaving this territory. You should do the same. After she left, Cole said, She's right. We should run. I know. But you're not going to. Are you? Elena looked at him. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, No, I'm not. Then neither am I. 2 days later, the territorial marshal finally responded to one of their letters. He was sending a deputy to investigate the allegations against Victor Hale. Expected arrival in 1 week. It felt like hope. Fragile, dangerous hope. They spent that week gathering more evidence, talking to families Hale had destroyed, documenting everything they could, building a case that felt almost solid. And then on the 6th day, a writer came from town with news that made the world stop. Lydia was dead. Elena heard the words, but they didn't make sense. The writer, a young man from the general store, kept talking, but his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Childbirth, they're saying. Baby, too. Both died. Funerals tomorrow. Mr. Hale's devastated, according to... Get out! Elena's voice didn't sound like her own. Ma'am, I'm just delivering the... Get out! She was screaming now. Get out! Get out! Get out! Cole escorted the rider outside. When he came back, Elena was standing in the middle of the kitchen, shaking. She's not dead, Elena said. She can't be. I just saw her. She was fine. She was... Elena. No, he killed her. Hale killed her. The words came out cold and certain. Something went wrong with the birth, and instead of getting her help, he let her die because she was a problem he didn't want to deal with anymore. You don't know that. I know him. Elena grabbed the table to steady herself. I know men like him. If the baby had lived and Lydia had died, he'd be showing off his heir, but they both died, which means there's no heir, and Lydia's just another dead wife. Tragic. So sad. Everyone will sympathize with the grieving widower. The storm that had been building inside her for months finally broke. Elena picked up the coffee cup on the table and threw it against the wall. Then another. Then plates, glasses, anything within reach. Destroying things felt good, felt necessary, felt like the only response that made sense. Cole let her rage, didn't try to stop her, just stood there while she broke every piece of pottery in the kitchen and screamed herself hoarse. When she finally collapsed on the floor among the shards, he sat beside her. I'm going to kill him, Elena said. Her voice was calm now, empty. I'm going to walk into that funeral tomorrow with a gun, and I'm going to shoot him in front of everyone. No, you're not. Why not? What's the alternative? Wait for him to kill us too? Hope the territorial marshal actually does something? Lydia's dead, Cole. My sister is dead, and he's going to stand at her funeral and play the victim, and everyone will believe him because that's what people do. They believe men with money and power. You're right. Cole pulled her against his chest. You're absolutely right. And if you walk in there with a gun, you'll die too. And he'll win. Completely. Elena wanted to argue, but the fight had drained out of her. She just sat there in the ruins of her kitchen and let Cole hold her while she cried for the sister she'd failed to save. The funeral was the next day. They didn't go. Couldn't stomach watching Hale play grieving husband while Lydia was lowered into ground that should have never held her. Instead, they sat on the porch and watched the sky. The deputy's coming in 3 days, Cole said eventually. We give him everything we have. Every document, every witness statement, every piece of evidence. We let the law handle it. The law hasn't handled anything so far. Then we make it handle this. We don't give up just because... His voice caught. We don't give up. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to think that evidence and testimony and the right words to the right person would make a difference. But belief felt impossible right now. That night she dreamed about Lydia, about the last time she'd seen her, pale and trapped and begging Elena to run. In the dream, Elena did run, grabbed Lydia and ran and kept running until they were both safe. She woke to Cole shaking her shoulder and the smell of smoke. Fire, he said. The barn's on fire. They stumbled outside into chaos. Flames were already consuming the barn, the heat so intense they couldn't get close. The horses were screaming. Elena ran toward the sound and felt Cole grab her. "You can't! The roof's going to collapse! The horses!" But it was too late. The roof gave way with a sound like the world ending, and the screaming stopped. They stood in the yard and watched everything burn. The barn, the equipment, the winter hay they'd stored, everything they needed to survive. "He did this," Elena said. "Hale. While we were grieving Lydia, he sent men to destroy us." "Probably. We need to—" Thunder overhead. Not from a storm, from hoofbeats. They turned and saw riders coming. Not Hale's men this time. Too many. 20, 30 riders, all armed. For a moment, Elena thought this was it. Hale had come to finish them off. Then she recognized Robert Finch at the front, and Samuel Hayes, and David, Cole's contact from Hale's ranch, and men she didn't know, but who wore the same expression, tired, angry, done with running. Robert rode up and dismounted. "Heard about the fire, came as fast as we could." "We're too late to save the barn," Samuel added, "but we're here for whatever comes next." "How did you—" Cole started. "Catherine Brennan sent word before she left. Told everyone what happened to Thomas. What Hale's doing." David stepped forward. "We're done hiding, done losing. If you're still fighting, we're with you." Elena looked at the men, ranchers, cowboys, working men with families and land and futures worth protecting. A ragtag army united by desperation. "He killed my sister," she said, "and he's going to kill all of us unless we stop him." "Then we stop him," Robert said simply. They spent that night planning, not revenge, strategy. The territorial deputy was coming. They needed Hale contained until then. Needed to prevent more violence without starting a war they couldn't win. But the morning brought news that changed everything. Hale had learned about the territorial deputy, and he was coming for them now with every man he could hire to eliminate the threat before the law arrived. "How long do we have?" Cole asked the messenger. "Hours. Maybe less. He's bringing 40 men, maybe 50. Says he's tired of playing games. Says he's going to burn every ranch that stood against him and kill anyone who tries to stop him." The men looked at each other. They had maybe 25 between them, half of Hale's force. And Hale's men were professional guns. Killers who did this for money. "We can't win a direct fight," Cole said. "Then we don't fight direct," Elena heard herself say. "We make him come to us. On ground we choose, and we hold him here until the deputy arrives." "That's suicide," someone said. "It's a chance," Elena countered. "Better than running. Better than letting him hunt us down one by one." They had 3 hours to prepare. 3 hours to turn Cole's ranch into something defensible. They dug rifle pits, set up barricades, positioned men in cover, sent riders to hurry the territorial deputy. And then they waited. Hale came as the sun reached its peak. 47 men on horseback, armed with rifles and revolvers, and the confidence that came from always winning. They stopped at the edge of the property, and Hale rode forward alone. "Maddox," he called, "you've made this harder than it needed to be." Cole stepped out from behind the house, rifle in hand. Elena stood beside him, her own weapon steady despite her terror. "You're on my land," Cole said, "and you're not welcome." "Your land?" Hale smiled. "I don't think so. You missed your payment. Property reverts to me. I'm just here to collect what's mine." "The territorial marshal is going to hear a different story," Elena said. "We've given him everything. All your records, all the evidence, every crime you've committed is documented." Something flickered in Hale's expression. Anger, maybe, or fear. "You broke into my house, stole my property. That makes you criminals. We recovered evidence of your crimes. That makes us witnesses." Elena took a step forward. "You killed my sister, and Thomas Brennan, and how many others? How many lives have you destroyed because you wanted their land? Your sister died in childbirth. It's tragic, but don't." Elena's voice cracked. "Don't you dare talk about tragedy. You bought her like livestock, trapped her, worked her to death, carrying a child she didn't want from a man she was forced to marry. That's not tragedy. That's murder." The men behind Hale shifted uncomfortably. Maybe some of them had wives, daughters. Maybe some of them were starting to realize what they'd signed up for. "You've got one chance," Cole said. "Turn around. Leave. Wait for the marshal to sort this out legally. Or start a fight you might not win." I've got 47 men. How many do you have? Enough, Robert Finch called from behind the barricade. And unlike your hired guns, we're fighting for something that matters. Hale's expression hardened. Last chance, Maddox. Surrender the land. Hand over those documents, and I'll let you and your wife walk away alive.
No, Elena and Cole said together. Hale raised his hand. So be it. Time seemed to slow. Elena saw Hale's hand drop, saw his men reach for their weapons, saw Cole raise his rifle, and then from behind them came the sound of more horses. Everyone turned. The territorial deputy rode in with 6 armed deputies, all wearing badges that gleamed in the sun. "Victor Hale," the deputy called. "You're under arrest for fraud, theft, arson, attempted murder, and about 15 other charges I'm still counting. Drop your weapons, all of you." Hale's men looked at each other, looked at their employer, started lowering their guns. Hale sat on his horse, face twisted with rage and disbelief. "You can't... I have lawyers. This is over," the deputy said. "Get off your horse, Mr. Hale, slowly." For a moment, Elena thought he'd fight, thought he'd rather die than face justice. But in the end, Victor Hale was a practical man. He dismounted. Let them put him in chains. As they led him away, he looked directly at Elena. "This isn't finished." "Yes," Elena said quietly. "It is." She watched them ride off. Hale in chains, his men scattered, his empire crumbling, and felt nothing. Not triumph, not relief, just emptiness where her sister used to be. Cole's hand found hers. "It's over. Lydia's still dead." "I know." He pulled her close. "I know." The men started dispersing, heading back to their own ranches, their own lives. Robert clapped Cole on the shoulder. David nodded respectfully to Elena. One by one they left. Elena and Cole stood in the yard of the ranch they'd defended, surrounded by the ruins of the barn and the scars of war, and tried to figure out what came next. The silence after victory was worse than the fighting. Elena spent the first week after Hale's arrest cleaning. Not just the ranch, though that needed it, with ash from the burned barn coating everything, but also sorting through the wreckage of what they'd stolen and what they'd lost. The documents they'd copied sat in neat stacks on the kitchen table. Evidence that had brought down an empire. Evidence that hadn't saved Lydia. She was scrubbing soot off the porch railing when a wagon pulled up. A woman climbed down, older, maybe 60, with gray hair and a face that had seen hard living. Behind her, a girl sat in the wagon bed, maybe 7 or 8, dark hair braided tight, watching everything with careful eyes. "You're Elena Maddox," the woman said. Not a question. "I am. I'm Margaret Finch, Robert's mother." She gestured to the girl. "This is Rose. She's Cole's daughter." Elena's hand stilled on the rag. "His what?" "His daughter, from his first marriage. Been living with me since Cole couldn't take care of her anymore, after his wife died." Margaret's voice was matter-of-fact but not unkind. "Heard he got himself married again. Figured it was time he knew his daughter's still alive and maybe ready to come home. If he wants her." Rose was staring at Elena with eyes that looked exactly like Cole's. Wary, hurt, old in ways children shouldn't be. "He doesn't know you're here," Elena said slowly. "No. Wasn't sure he'd want to see her. Wasn't sure he deserved to, honestly. Man who gives up his child because grief made him useless." Margaret stopped. "But Robert says Cole's sober now. Been sober 2 years, says he's trying, so I'm giving him a chance to prove it." Elena's mind was racing. Cole had a daughter, a child he'd surrendered, a piece of his past he'd never mentioned. "Wait here," she said. She found Cole in what was left of the barn, salvaging what he could from the wreckage. He looked up when she approached, and something in her face made him set down the charred beam he was holding. "What's wrong?" "There's a woman here. Says she's Robert's mother. She has..." Elena didn't know how to say it gently, so she just said it. "She has your daughter." All the color drained from Cole's face. "Rose?" That's what she said. Cole walked past her toward the house like a man moving through water. Elena followed. They came around to the front where Margaret stood with her arms crossed, and Rose still sat in the wagon, small and uncertain. Cole stopped 10 feet away, stared at the girl like she might disappear if he moved wrong. "Rose," he said. His voice cracked on the name. The girl didn't respond,
just watched him with those careful eyes. "She doesn't remember you," Margaret said. "She was 3 when you gave her to me. She knows you're her father, but—" She shrugged. "Knowing and remembering are different things." "I know." Cole took a step closer, then another, knelt down so he was at the girl's eye level, even though she was still in the wagon. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't... I know it's not enough. But I'm sorry for leaving you, for not being—" His voice failed. Rose tilted her head, studying him. "Grandma Margaret says you stopped drinking." "I did, 2 years ago." "Why?" "Because I was tired of being the man who gave you away. Thought maybe if I sobered up, got my life straight, I could—" Cole stopped. "I could be someone you might want to know." "Do you want me back?" Rose asked. The question was so direct, so painfully honest that Elena felt her chest tighten. Cole's hands were shaking. "More than anything in the world. Even though you gave me away before?" "I gave you away because I was broken and I couldn't take care of you right. Not because I didn't want you. I've wanted you back every single day for 5 years." Tears were running down Cole's face now. "But wanting isn't the same as deserving. And I won't take you from Margaret if you're happy there. If that's your home, I won't hurt you again." Rose looked at Margaret. Margaret looked at Elena. And Elena realized they were all waiting to see what she'd say. The new wife. The stranger who'd appeared in Cole's life and might not want a child she hadn't signed up for. Elena stepped forward and knelt beside Cole, looked at Rose directly. "I'm Elena," she said. "I married your father a few months ago. This ranch is, well, it's seen better days. The barn burned down last week, and there's work that'll take years to fix. It's not comfortable here. It's not easy. But if you want to come home, if you want to give your father a chance to be what he should have been from the start—" Elena glanced at Cole. "We'd both like that. Very much." Rose was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Can I think about it?" "Of course," Cole said immediately. "I'll bring her back in a week," Margaret said. "Let her spend some time here, see if it feels right. Rose is old enough to have a say in where she lives." She helped the girl down from the wagon. "1 week, you treat her right, or I'm taking her back permanently. Understood?" "Understood," Cole said. Margaret climbed back into the wagon and drove off, leaving Rose standing in the yard with a small bag and an expression that said she wasn't sure about any of this. Elena stood. "Are you hungry? I was about to make lunch." Rose nodded. They ate in awkward silence, bread and cheese and the last of the dried meat. Rose sat at the table picking at her food while Cole watched her like she might vanish. The tension was so thick Elena could barely swallow. Finally she said, "Rose, do you like horses?" The girl looked up. "I guess." "We have 2 left. They're old and stubborn, but they're friendly. Want to meet them?" Rose nodded again. Elena took her out to the corral and introduced her to the horses while Cole stayed behind, looking shell-shocked. The girl was quiet but not unfriendly. She asked questions about the ranch, about what happened to the barn, about why there were rifle pits in the yard. "We had to fight some bad men," Elena said carefully. "It's over now, but it made a mess. Grandma Margaret says fighting always makes messes." She's right. Rose reached through the fence to pet one of the horses. "Are you and my papa really married?" "We are." "Do you love him?" The question caught Elena off guard. She thought about the truth, that their marriage had started as strategy, as survival, as anything but love. That she barely knew Cole when they'd signed the papers. That everything between them had been built in crisis. But she also thought about the past months. About standing beside him when Hale's men came. About him holding her while she cried for Lydia. About the way they'd learned to move around each other in the small house, anticipating needs, offering support without words. "I care about him," Elena said finally, "and I respect him. Love's complicated, but those things are real." "That's good," Rose said. "Grandma says respect matters more than love anyway." "Your grandma sounds smart." "She is." Rose pulled her hand back from the horse. "Do you want me here? Really?" Elena knelt down so they were eye to eye. "Yes, really. Your father's not perfect. Neither am I. We're both figuring things out as we go. But having you here—" She stopped, searching for the right words. "I lost my sister recently. She died and I couldn't save her.
And I've been feeling like there's this hole where she used to be, like everything's broken and won't ever be whole again. But maybe, Elena's voice caught, maybe families aren't about being whole.
Maybe they're about broken people holding on to each other and trying to build something anyway. That sound terrible?
No. Rose's voice was soft. That sounds okay. That week was harder than fighting Hale had been. Not because Rose was difficult. She was quiet, watchful, but not unkind. Hard because Elena and Cole were both trying so desperately not to mess it up that they kept tripping over their own caution.
Cole asked Rose 100 questions. What she liked, what she remembered, what she wanted, and Rose answered politely, but with walls up so high Elena could practically see them. At night, after Rose went to bed in Elena's room, Elena had insisted, moving herself to the couch. Cole sat at the table, staring at nothing. "She doesn't trust me," he said on the third night. "She doesn't know you," Elena countered. "Give her time." "What if time's not enough? What if I've broken it so badly I can't—" "Cole." Elena sat across from him. "You can't fix 8 years in a week. You can't undo what happened. All you can do is be different now, be the father she needs now, and let her decide if that's enough. And if it's not, then you keep trying, because that's what parents do." She said it with more certainty than she felt, because the truth was, Elena didn't know anything about being a parent, didn't know if she'd be any good at it, didn't know if wanting to help was the same as being able to help. But she knew about wanting to belong somewhere, about needing someone to choose you when everyone else had given up. And maybe that was enough to start with. On the 5th day, Rose asked if she could help with chores. Elena taught her to feed the chickens and collect eggs. Cole showed her how to check the fence line. Small things. Normal things. Things families did. That night Rose laughed at something Cole said. Just a small laugh. Barely there, but real. And Elena saw Cole's face transform like he'd been given something priceless. When Margaret came back a week later, Rose was sitting on the porch braiding wildflowers into a crown while Cole fixed the fence nearby and Elena kneaded bread dough through the open window. Margaret climbed down from the wagon and took in the scene. "Well," she said, "that's different from what I expected." Rose stood up, the flower crown slipping. "I want to stay." Margaret looked at her for a long moment. "You sure?" "I'm sure." "If it gets bad, if anything happens, you send word and I'll come get you immediately. You hear me?" "I hear you." Rose threw her arms around Margaret's waist. "Thank you for taking care of me, for everything." Margaret hugged her back hard. Then she looked at Cole. "You messed this up. I'll come back here and make you regret it in ways you can't imagine." "I know," Cole said. "I won't. I swear I won't." After Margaret left, they stood in the yard, the three of them, and Elena felt something shift, like they'd gone from people occupying the same space to something that might eventually become a family. It wouldn't be easy. Rose had nightmares sometimes, waking up crying for her mother who'd died years ago. Cole still carried guilt so heavy it bent him double some days. And Elena was still learning how to live with the hole where Lydia used to be. But they were trying. That had to count for something. The trial came 6 weeks later. Elena and Cole traveled to the territorial capital to testify, leaving Rose with Margaret. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, ranchers, people who'd been destroyed by Hale's greed and wanted to see justice done. Victor Hale sat at the defense table looking smaller than Elena remembered. Older, almost pathetic. But when his eyes met hers, she saw the same cold calculation that had killed her sister. The prosecutor called witness after witness. Ranchers who'd been threatened. Families who'd lost land. The sheriff who'd been on Hale's payroll testified to save his own skin, confirming bribes and cover-ups. The evidence was overwhelming. When it was Elena's turn, she walked to the stand and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor asked about the documents they'd stolen, about what they'd found, about Lydia. "Tell the court about your sister," the prosecutor said gently. Elena looked directly at Hale. Her name was Lydia. She was 17 years old when my father sold her to Victor Hale for $300. She didn't want to marry him. She was forced. And when I saw her 6 weeks before she died, she was a prisoner in her own home, terrified, trapped, too pregnant to run and too scared to stay. Her voice didn't shake. She died in childbirth, both her and the baby, And I believe Victor Hale let her die because she'd stopped being useful to him. Objection, Hale's lawyer jumped up. Speculation. Sustained, the judge said, but the damage was done. The courtroom had heard it. The defense tried to paint Elena and Cole as criminals who'd broken into Hale's home, as liars with an agenda, as disgruntled ranchers looking for someone to blame for their own failures. But the evidence was too strong, the witnesses too numerous, the pattern too clear. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found Victor Hale guilty on 17 counts, including fraud, theft, bribery, conspiracy, and attempted murder. The judge sentenced him to 20 years in territorial prison. Elena felt nothing when the verdict came. No triumph, no relief, just exhaustion. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. They wanted statements, wanted the story of how a cook from a saloon and a recovering drunk had brought down a cattle empire. Elena pushed through without commenting. Cole did the same. They rode back to the ranch in silence. It's done, Cole said finally. It's done, Elena agreed. Do you feel... He stopped. Do you feel like it was worth it? Elena thought about Lydia buried in ground 200 miles away, about Thomas Brennan shot in his own pasture, about all the people who'd lost everything and couldn't get it back no matter how many verdicts came down. No, she said honestly, but it was necessary. That's not the same thing. When they got home, Rose ran out to meet them. Did you win? We won, Elena said. Good. Rose grabbed both their hands. I made dinner. Well, Grandma Margaret helped, but I stirred the pot. They went inside and ate Rose's somewhat burned stew and talked about things that had nothing to do with trials or justice or revenge. Normal things. School starting in the fall. Whether they should get a dog. How to rebuild the barn. Later, after Rose was asleep, Elena sat on the porch and stared at the stars. Cole joined her, bringing coffee. What happens now? He asked. I don't know. Elena took the cup. We rebuild, I guess. The barn, the ranch, whatever comes next. The territorial government seizing Hale's assets, all his land, his cattle, everything. They're offering parcels to the ranchers he forced out. Chance to buy back what was stolen at fair prices. Cole sipped his coffee. Robert says we should organize, create a cooperative, pool resources so we're stronger together. That's a good idea. Would take work, years of work. Building trust, creating structures, making sure... He stopped. Making sure we don't become what we fought against. Can I ask you something? Elena turned to face him. This marriage, this partnership, it was supposed to be strategy, protection, but Rose changes that, changes what this is. Yeah. So what is it? What are we? Cole was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Not what we started as, something different, something... He struggled for words. Something real, maybe. If you want it to be? Elena thought about it. About the months they'd spent fighting together, sleeping in separate rooms, building something neither of them had named. About how she'd gone from running from one man's house to defending another man's land, and somewhere in that chaos had found a reason to stay. I want it to be real, she said finally. But not because we have to. Not because there's an enemy outside forcing us together. Real because we choose it. Then we choose it. Cole reached for her hand. Every day. Until we can't anymore or don't want to. But as long as we're both choosing, that's what makes it real. His hand was calloused from ranch work, warm in the cool night air. Elena squeezed it once and didn't let go. The months that followed were the hardest and best of Elena's life. Hard because grief didn't fade just because the fight was over. She'd wake some mornings expecting to hear Lydia's voice, then remember with fresh pain that she never would again. Hard because learning to be a parent to a child who'd already been abandoned once meant walking on eggshells while trying to build trust. Hard because the ranch work was endless and exhausting, and some days Elena wanted to burn it all down and walk away. But best because she was choosing it. Every morning, every hard conversation with Rose, every fence post driven into unforgiving ground. Every moment was hers in a way nothing had been before. They rebuilt the barn with help from Robert and Samuel and a dozen other ranchers who showed up unasked with tools and materials and labor. It took 2 months, and when it was finished, it was stronger than the original had been. Fireproof panels, better ventilation, a loft where Rose immediately claimed space for her own. It's good, Cole said. standing back to admire it. Better than before. That's the thing about rebuilding, Robert said. You get to fix the mistakes from the first time. They formed the cooperative like Cole had suggested. 12 ranching families pooling resources, sharing water rights, coordinating cattle sales. Elena kept the books and discovered she was good at it. Good at seeing patterns, at negotiating prices, at making sure everyone got their fair share. You should run for county clerk, Catherine Brennan said one day. She'd come back to the territory after selling her land, bought a smaller place near town, and started working with the cooperative. We need someone in that office who actually cares about people instead of whoever pays the most. I'm not qualified, Elena said. You brought down Victor Hale. I'd say you're qualified. Elena ran for county clerk the next spring and won by 40 votes. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She moved her office between the ranch and the county building, keeping records, filing claims, making sure the small ranchers had someone in government who remembered what it felt like to have nothing. Rose started school. She was smart, stubborn, and slow to trust, exactly like her father. She made one friend by the end of the first month, and Elena counted that as a victory. The friend's name was Sarah, and she came to the ranch sometimes to ride horses and complain about arithmetic homework. Normal kid things. One night, Rose asked Elena if she could call her Ma. Elena's throat closed up. You don't have to. I know, but you're doing the mom things. Braiding my hair and making sure I eat vegetables and helping with school, and my real ma's been gone a long time, so Rose shrugged, trying to look casual. Can I? Yes, Elena managed. You can call me Ma. Rose hugged her hard and fast, then ran off before Elena could see her crying. But Elena saw anyway, and she let herself cry too, for the daughter she'd gained and the sister she'd lost and everything in between. 2 years after Hale's trial, Elena got a letter from her father, the first contact since she'd run away. He was dying, the letter said. Lung disease from the coal dust. Wanted to see her before the end. Wanted to apologize. She burned the letter. A week later, she got another one. This time from Margaret, her stepmother, begging Elena to come home, saying Henry was suffering, that he regretted everything, that he wanted to make amends. Elena wrote back with one line. You made your choices. Live with them. Cole found her sitting on the porch afterward, staring at nothing. You okay? He asked. He wants forgiveness. Elena's voice was flat. Dying man wants his daughter to absolve him so he can go peaceful. And part of me wants to go. Wants to tell him everything, how he destroyed me and Lydia both, how his choices killed her, how I spent 26 years believing I was worthless because that's what his house taught me. She looked at Cole. But another part of me knows it won't change anything. Won't bring Lydia back. Won't make him understand what he did. It'll just be me shouting at a dying man and calling it closure. So don't go, Cole said simply. That makes me a bad person. No, it makes you someone who knows the difference between forgiveness and letting people off easy. He sat beside her. You don't owe him peace. You don't owe anyone your pain. If staying away means you heal better, then stay away. Elena thought about it for 3 days. Then she wrote one more letter, not to her father, to Raymond, her stepbrother. Tell him I survived, she wrote. Tell him I built a life he can't touch and helped destroy a man worse than he ever was. Tell him I'm happy. That's all the closure he gets. She never heard back, but 2 months later, Catherine brought news from back east. Henry Mercer had died. The Coaltown house was being sold. Margaret and Raymond were moving. You want to go to the funeral? Catherine asked. No, Elena said, and meant it. Applause filled the room. Elena looked out at faces she knew. Catherine running the women's shelter they'd established. Robert managing cooperative sales. Samuel organizing new water-sharing agreements. Beth teaching bookkeeping to young women who needed skills. Rose sitting in the front row beside a young man she'd been courting, already planning her own ranch, her own future. And Cole at the back. Gray in his hair now, but steady, solid, still choosing this life every morning. My sister Lydia never got to see this, Elena continued. She died trapped and afraid. But she's the reason I fight, the reason we all fight. Because nobody should die like she did, powerless, voiceless, forgotten. We honor her by building a world where that can't happen, where women have options, where families have support, where power means protecting people instead of controlling them. More applause. Elena stepped down from the podium and walked into the crowd. People shook her hand, thanked her, told her their own stories of survival and rebuilding. She listened to all of them, because that was the work. Not grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, just the daily choice to help, to show up, to build something that would outlast them all. That night, back at the ranch, Elena and Cole sat on the porch, the one they'd rebuilt 3 times now, the one that had seen fights and grief and hard-won victories. "You did good today," Cole said. "We did good," Elena corrected. "All of us together." "Think Lydia would be proud?"
Elena thought about her sister, about the frightened girl at that table, trapped by men's decisions, about how Lydia had begged Elena to survive even when she couldn't, about the daughter Lydia never got to have and the life she never got to live. "I think she'd be glad something good came from something terrible," Elena said finally. "I think that's all any of us can hope for, that we take the broken pieces and build something worth having."
They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge. Somewhere in the house, Rose was making plans for tomorrow's work. In town, the shelter had 3 women tonight who'd have been homeless otherwise. Across the valley, families slept secure on land they owned, protected by agreements and cooperation, instead of hoping powerful men would be merciful. It wasn't perfect. Some ranchers still lost land. Some women still got trapped.